I just
No.
need
You
you.
don't have tonight?
How often
Yes,
do you bring
I know.
items
And the
before
board
the
is up?
commission?
We're grateful we
As
don't
well?
have it tonight.
So
Yes,
Oh,
when I was
probably
here the
about
other day for a meeting, I was
2
like,
or
oh,
3
look, it's
times.
there, I can
Yes,
point
I
to it
found
now.
him.
Let me mash it in there.
Well, I'm just saying we need to review them again. This is continued from the
Yes,
time
we do
before.
need to
Okay,
review
because we
them
didn't close the
again,
record.
and we need to call for ex parte
Right,
contact,
got it.
conflict of interest since
Got it.
the last
Got
hearing.
it.
Sorry.
I'm glad somebody's got it, because I don't get it.
I'll get it to you if you want it.
Just roll it down here, will
Roll
you?
it down.
Huh?
Okay. Dessert, yeah, that's it. All right. Another one? Okay, 3A. I got item number 38 here, I'm not sure which one that is. No, doesn't that look like a 38 to you? Just really quickly, Terry, you want to speak on item number 3A? Just nod your head wherever you are, Terry Boyd. Yes. Okay, that wasn't nodding, but you wrote 38 on here, and I didn't know which item that was. Okay, that's all right. Thank you. I just want to make sure I get the right one. Oh, we are really fun after you guys leave. You just don't know it. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for October the 9th. For those of you that are off today, happy Columbus Day. And for those of you who are not off today, sorry, it is Indigenous Persons Day as well. So we have two items, two public hearings on our agenda tonight. And I want to first of all ask, are there any comments from anyone in the audience who would like to chat with us about items that are not on the agenda? So if you are, just come on up, and we would love to listen to whatever it is that you would like to tell us. Pardon?
I would use the word love.
Of course we would. We would love to hear it. All right, so seeing no one for that particular item, number 2, we'll move to item number 3. And as I said before, we have 2 public hearings on the agenda. Both of them have been continued. And the record on the first public hearing is still open, so bear with me while I go through the quasi-judicial hearing procedure in case there was someone here who was not here last time and you are just mesmerized by what we're going to be saying on this quasi-judicial land use hearing script. So tonight we are hearing continued hearing TP 1703, zone change 1702 for property located near White Lane, the former Wheeler Farm, or currently it still is the Wheeler Farm. And as you're aware, a staff report has been prepared for this application and has been made available to the public 7 days prior to this hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that applies to each of the applicant's proposals, and staff has analyzed that criteria, which is contained in that staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. And tonight I can say, and we have the chart over there. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card, which I believe you all did. So if you decide you want to talk later, it's okay. You can come up and then give us your card afterwards. So they will proceed generally in the order that I have them here. Please make sure that your contact information is on there so the city can notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony by stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed to the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, please identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the record is open on each application. Any written material received by staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in that record. Written material submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to be part of that record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, and other exhibits to be used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to city staff while the record is still open. If they are not given to the staff, they will not be included as part of that record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public hearing testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision in which you disagree, any issue you may wish to appeal must have been raised for consideration of the City Commission or the Land Use Board of Appeals, or both. Without raising an issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements of evidence that the city and all parties can respond to, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. So if you hear the word LUBA, that's the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So we will now open the public hearing, the continued public hearing for, again, the file TP 1703, ZC 1702. And since the last meeting we had, does any commissioner have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statements to declare? And please let us know if you have visited the site.
I missed part of what you were saying. Could you repeat that?
Absolutely.
No, I'm kidding. I have not. No, nothing to report.
Okay.
I visited the site again, but I've had no ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest.
I've been by the site, but I don't have any ex parte contacts.
No new contact?
Nothing to declare.
And I have visited the site again, but I did not see anyone when I was there, nor have I had any ex parte contacts about it. So we are good. Does anybody in the audience wish to ask any question of us about any of the disclosures that we have made? Okay, so we will commence now with is this an updated staff report?
No. It's
Okay,
an
we'll just go with the regular staff report.
Thank you, Chair McGriff. I have the presentation from 2 weeks ago on. I'm still going to go through it really quickly to remind everybody of the issues, but I won't pause on the slides that much unless you've asked me to. Before we start, as part of my presentation 2 weeks ago, I identified a revised condition of approval, number 19, that just provided more clarity, and that's available on your dais. And I think I have a couple extra here, but they were in the presentation 2 weeks ago. So if there is a recommendation for approval with conditions, I recommend that the motion include this revised condition. So this is TP 1703 and ZC 1702. Just really briefly, the applicant is proposing a zone change from R10 to R8 for a 77-lot subdivision. As part of the Type 2 process that normally is a subdivision, they are also asking for a modification to block standard, 26 feet, and the cul-de-sac length, 89 feet, and findings are found in the staff report for that. And these modifications are often occur under the subdivision process because we put lots of dimensional standards on lot block and width, but then you have to put a subdivision in the real world and connect it up to lots around you. And so staff felt that these two modifications were acceptable, and because the applicant met the intent of the block standard and an extra street or an extra pedestrian path, did not make sense at that time to require that through those existing proposed blocks. There's an allowance of a constrained street near Tract A to save a very large tree. That would reduce the width of the street from a traditional 53-foot right-of-way to a constrained street, and just in that section of Tract A. The applicant meets the dimensional density standards of R8. However, I do want to let the Planning Commission know that in my conversations with the neighbors, they brought up some questions on lots in the subdivision, and I took out the big plans and my engineering scale, and I did find that Lot 4 is a couple of feet below the 60-foot minimum width. I did check the rest of the lots the neighbors did have concerns about, and those do meet the 60-foot lot width requirement, and that's measured at a midpoint in the lot. My recommendation, if you are to move forward with recommended approval to the City Commission, is to provide an additional condition of approval, number 31. It says, prior to plating, the applicant shall demonstrate that the subdivision complies with the lot width and depth dimensional standards of the zone. The applicant is also providing an integrated stormwater management system as well as a 1.3 acre remainder property that will be incorporated into the Budding Wheeler property offsite. And we do have conditions of approval. They also have a voluntary 1.35 acre open space. This is not something we're requiring. This is something the applicant is proposing. Subject site is located kind of near White Lane and Central Point Road. This kind of shows the existing zoning in the area. You'll see it's a mix of R8 and R10, as well as R6 closer to Wesley Lynn Park. The applicant provided us some shadow platting and some existing layouts of the subdivisions that have been approved or are about to be built. So you can see the subdivision is outlined in yellow.
Could you say that again?
So Ed Orchard up here, trying to find my,
You were saying that they provided the shadow plat,
right.
Then-
So this shows the proposed subdivision.
right, the yellow.
Ed Orchard is about to be built. It has been approved. And this, as far as I know, is a shadow plat of the lot that, an existing lot that has not been developed. But as part of our subdivision requirement, we do require applicants to show how their subdivision layout allows for timely development of abutting parcels.
And connectivity with streets.
Connectivity, yeah. So you can't be building a subdivision lot layout that does not allow your neighbors to subdivide or makes it very difficult. So that was their layout. This is, as I showed here, the subdivision is a bit of an odd shape. So this is the top part of the subdivision, and this is the bottom part, showing the proposed cul-de-sac, the tract that's voluntary, the PG easement, and the storm pond. This is the location of the constrained street. This is a very large Doug fir that the applicant wishes to retain. So the public comments received as of the meeting last 2 weeks ago, West Susan Richter submitted comments as well as all the comments that were provided at the public meeting on September 25th. They've been added into the record and actually were attached to your agenda tonight. So right now you have all the written public comments that have been turned in to me as staff so far. So the criteria for zone change I'm going to leave up. So as we move forward, this I will leave for the Planning Commission and also for public comment. Staff, this is a bit interesting application because we have a very clear and objective type 2 subdivision that is being coupled with type 4 zone change that goes to the Planning Commission and provides a recommendation to the City Commission. The applicant could have had a linear process where they came in for the zone change and then they came back with a type 2 subdivision. But they chose to be transparent and submit a concurrent application that is going up through the Planning Commission and City Commission. I also wanted to go over a staff's memo that was added to your file that provides some background to public comments that were received. In particular, what I'd like to talk to you tonight is about ex parte comment and staff's involvement. As we explained at the September 25th meeting, staff does not have ex parte contact requirements. Actually, my job as staff to meet with anybody before the hearing, after the hearing, through any of the process. I meet with applicants, the public, really anybody who is interested in the process. Right before the meeting on September 25th, I grabbed the applicant and went to a quieter area because the lobby was a bit busy. And we went over my presentation I was about to give. I hadn't gotten a chance to explain to them what I'd be presenting, as well as they actually requested 2 conditions of approval to be revised. But Development Services was not able to support one of those conditions, and I wanted to let them know that we would only be moving forward as staff recommendations for 1 revised condition. And they also asked questions related to, do they need to provide their own presentation, or did I have the subsequent plans that were needed in the in my presentation, so they didn't have to upload. So just for pure clarity, that was the conversation I had with the applicants. I've met with neighbors over the phone and in person prior to this meeting, and I will continue to meet with anybody who has interest or needs any resources for this application. So just for clarity, I wanted to provide that. I'm going to pass this over to Carrie Richter, Assistant City Attorney, who will provide a little bit of a legal lens on the criteria for subdivision and zone change.
Thank you. Chair McGriff and planning commissioners, I worked with Ms. Robertson Gardner to prepare a memo that I wanted to use to sort of set the framework here, because we've had a lot of public testimony related to things that I'm not sure that we have control over, because I'm not sure they relate to the criteria. A lot of the testimony we heard was related to the way that we do the lot density calculation and the lot averaging. And I think what the neighbors are responding to is that there are some large lots in this subdivision that are throwing off the average and are allowing much smaller than 8,000 square foot lots to remain. And unfortunately, our code, when we review a subdivision, we have to use clear and objective standards. That means we cannot make a discretionary decision. That means that we have to evaluate things based on quantitative data, and that is why we have that lot averaging provision in there. The zone change is a discretionary review. So I want you to think of this as sort of two different requests. There is a zone change request that is a discretionary review that has to do with whether largely the comprehensive plan policies are met to justify the change from R10 to R8. As you know, that in the city has 3 low-density residential comprehensive plan designations, R10, R8, and R6. This means that all 3 of those zoning designations implement a low-density comprehensive plan designation. So, you know, it's a fine analysis here that goes into whether or not it's appropriate for R10, R8, or R6. And that takes some balancing of the comprehensive plan policies. What we've tried to do as staff is provide an analysis that encourages housing. We have presented some analysis that approximately 24% of the city is currently within the R10 zoning district, while only 16 or 17% of the city is zoned R8, 13% is zoned R6. So it would even things out more to have a little more R8 in the city. We also include plan policies that talk about services, what the demand will be from this development, because the demand on your services will be greater at R6 or R8. So those are also things that go into this analysis. But overall, staff felt that because this is an area where we have the services, where the transportation connectivity is there, we have a shadow plat that shows alternative, a number of roads, a number of connections, and that we want to encourage greater housing options within the city. The testimony we heard is that these smaller lot size will reduce the livability of the area. I'm not sure if the evidence has been submitted that it will reduce the livability of the area. If this is a high demand place that people want to live in, then people will want to live in whether the lots are small or not. And so that is, but again, that is related to whether or not to grant the zone change. Whether it's R10 or whether it's R8, this lot averaging concept will remain, because it is a clear standard. It is a clear and objective standard. So if they come in at R10, there will still be lots that will be small, right, Christina? So I'm not sure that this would resolve the concern, because the lots won't have to be 10,000 square feet under an R10 subdivision. And we may not like that rule. We could change that rule, but we can't change it during this proceeding. We could change it at another, we could go through a legislative process to change the code to provide that the minimum lot size in an R8 subdivision is 8,000 square feet. We haven't done that. So that's what we tried to set forth in this memo. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I understand that this is a complicated and it's a difficult questions before you.
Read the comment that at R10, lots will still be smaller. However, when I look at the items here, I can understand that some are at 8, some are at 7, some are at 6. But the majority, the higher percentage of these is 7,000 or less. So how does that apply to what you just said? Because there's 20 at 7,000 and 6,000.
It's an average, so I can't tell you how that math would turn out. What I can tell you is that there could be a significant number of lots that are less than 10,000, just like there are a significant number of lots that are less than 6,000, or less than 8,000. Because the lot averaging obligation applies at R10 and it applies at R8.
At R10, can lots still go down as low as 6 and 7?
Yeah,
when you do
20%.
R10?
No, 20%. You can't go below
Why don't you
20%.
go ahead and explain that?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out.
You
So
want to
that-
explain it, Christina?
That would be
Sure.
great.
So the way 20% works is you get your net developable properties out with the subdivision, and you take a look at how many lots you could put on there in the zone.
So let's use the number 100, and let's say you can develop 80 lots.
Okay, so of those 80 lots, so if you have, let's say if you have a 10,000 square foot zone, just make the math easier.
Sure.
You can have, 20% of 10,000, it is 9,200.
8,000.
Right,
8,000.
sorry.
That's okay. Let us do the math.
Yeah, so I'm saying
Thank you.
is you can average 20% difference of the underlying zone's lot. So if you can go down to 8,000 if you have a 10,000 square foot, 10,000 R10 zone. And so in R8, you could be, I think it's 7,200 or 6,400. And therefore, then at the very end of the day, you average out all the lots that are below your zoning minimum lot size and all the lots that are above, and you still have to average out your minimum zone. So if it's 8,000, they have to average out on that Excel spreadsheet 8,000, and you can't go lower than 20% of the zone, but you can have lots that are much higher. And then when you're all done, and you can't have anything, we also have a requirement, which the applicant has met. When we zone an area, we also want to make sure we don't have people coming in who vastly underdevelop properties, because we are looking at timely provision of services and understanding our sewer master plans, and our water master plans, and our transportation system plans. And if areas develop well under the density, then that really upsets our future calculations. So we also have a requirement that you have to meet 80% of your area's density. Now this applicant has, I think they're up in the high 90s, but we also kind of have it that way too. We want to make sure people don't vastly underdevelop. So we allow the applicant to have this window, kind of between 80 and 100% of the density of the site, as well as a 20% lot swing between kind of a little bit under the lot area and a little bit above, but they have to average out to the lot area of the underlying zone.
So using my round number of 100, and 80% is developable, and the 20% rule, so that would mean how many lots are supposed to be at R8 or higher, and how many are
Okay.
below that?
So I'm going to read what the applicant
Sure.
said. The project includes 77 lots for the future construction of the single-family detached homes in the R8 zoning district. As permitted above, a number of the planned lots are less than 8,000 square feet. The smallest of the future lots is approximately 6,406 square feet, which is within the maximum 20% reduction allowed in the standard. A number of the planned lots are also larger than 8,000, with the largest being 26,814.
But that doesn't tell me the number.
Right, the average
Is it
lot
in
area
there?
is 8,279 square feet,
Say
which
that
is
again, please.
exceeds, so in this application, the average lot area is 8,279 square feet. So with the rezone, they are above their minimum requirements of an average lot size.
So my
of
question is,
8,000.
how many are above 8,000? Like, are there 10 above, 20 above of the 77?
So what I'd like to do is, I don't have that offhand, and I have to look in the staff report, but I can provide that before the end. But yes, to answer the question though, we don't have a maximum of If you have one lot that's larger and all of your lots are slightly less, but you average out, that's allowed by our zone. So we don't have a maximum number of lots that you have to be exactly at the 8,000. That's how the lot averaging works.
Okay, so again,
And I will provide that exact number, but I have
yeah,
to
the
look it up.
the question was asked several times, and I know some of the people that are here to testify
Mm-hmm.
have that number, but I just want to make sure that it's really clear and it's on the record, so
Yeah.
that somebody looking at this, as we say, viewers in TV land,
Mm-hmm.
will go, wait a minute, what does that mean, and how does that, that's why I'm asking the question.
Yes,
Well,
and
I've got a document here that says there are 39 lots of 6,000 square feet. Now, am I reading this wrong, or?
well, that's the applicant's, I mean, that's neighborhood comment. So let me, just to make sure I'm providing the right information, I'm gonna look through and verify that number. The reason why I don't have it offhand is it's not been a criteria of a number I needed to know, so I don't have it embedded in the staff report. So I will get you that number.
So, question for you. So if the staff has given us this information that suggesting that we should approve this, and there was code that says that we have the averaging, what are we determining here? Aren't we supposed to use our discretion about the zones of what we feel is appropriate?
You have some discretion to determine whether or not the zone change is appropriate.
Okay, that's what I needed.
But I encourage you to take a hard look at the plan and try to, and identify where those plan policies are. Because the Goal 10 plan policies focus on providing housing and maintaining existing housing, but also encouraging housing. And R6 or R8 will result in greater density, so that would encourage housing. There are some plan policies in Goal 2.4 related to neighborhood livability that talk about providing a sense of place and maintaining neighborhoods as a basic unit of community life. Could it be possible that the R8 deprives this area of a sense of place? When I think of sense of place, I think of McLaughlin neighborhood. I don't think of a undeveloped area that we intended to develop at urban densities to be a neighborhood, to be a community. I think of inclusiveness and making a diverse community as a community that has multiple different sizes of lots in it.
No, that's very true, but the converse could be true as well, that an R10 can be said to create neighborhood livability in the sense of place because the lots would still be very similar, even if they are average. So you can play that coin, both ways.
I am trying to
Yeah.
point out that there are some Goal 10 policies that talk about encouraging housing, and there are some Goal 2 policies that talk about neighborhood livability.
Go ahead. speak
Carrie,
up.
has there been a housing needs analysis done at the city?
The last housing needs
Setting
analysis,
up, the different needs for the different types of housing?
not lately. Last
Identity,
one was
low
done in
density,
2004 in
okay,
preparation
I was
for,
wondering, where you guys were at on that. 'Cause I
Yeah.
think that it makes it a lot easier for you guys to comply with the metro housing rule requirements, and then it would give us a better handle on where we're at in terms of what we need in terms of R8 and R10 and all of that, instead of just kind of looking at the staff report kind of fast and loose as to, R8, R10, livability, quality of life, and those kinds of
Yeah, well, we have to look at them
big
all.
things, yeah, okay.
Does any of the commissioners have any? Yes, sir.
Carrie, I'm under the impression that it's the applicant that has the responsibility to submit to the planning commission the need, if you will, for approval of this application. There's a need, and that it's their responsibility to submit that information to us. In other words, the onus is on them and not the city. We've established already through our comp plan what our needs are and how we're gonna meet those through our facility planning, and things of that nature. In your judgment, has this been done?
The applicant has the burden of proof, and you are absolutely right. They have got to submit evidence that shows that the criteria, the applicable approval criteria are satisfied. I think that at our last hearing, if I remember correctly, I'm not sure that the applicant rebutted everything that was submitted. We received a bunch of new testimony, and it was late. So I don't remember if we had much in the way of rebuttal. I would expect that we would get a more substantive presentation this evening. Staff has interpreted the criteria based on the evidence that was available to us at the time.
Submitted by the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we sit right now. I don't think evidence has been submitted to me anyway to convince me that the plan policies are not satisfied. In my mind, I think the plan policies remain satisfied, but it is your job to interpret the plan policies in the first instance.
And then going to 30,000 feet, I know we can't talk about it tonight, but I would like to be able to look at how this, and I like doing the master planning, but I would also like to be able to look at all the areas that need to be zoned R10, R8, and R7, R6, whatever, on a more comprehensive level, and have the comprehensive plan map mirror the zoning map instead of having high density, low density, and then, because what happens is you annex property, and the R10, there's an R10 holding zone, and then by default, people come in and say, oh, well, that's just a holding zone, we'll just go R8 or R6 or whatever. And so, but because R10 is just a holding zone, and we'll just change it that way. So I would like to have a real discussion with the planning commissioners at some point and talk about whether or not we would be interested in looking at establishing zoning designations in a more comprehensive way throughout the city, instead of having this incremental approach that we're doing here tonight.
The death by 1,000 cuts.
So, not that it's relevant to tonight, but we don't have a work plan to review the zoning of the
Right.
city to upzone or downzone or anything at this
Yeah,
point.
I know
in time. But we are working on an equitable housing project, so we'll be looking at code as it
Yep.
relates to housing
I'm
opportunities.
just putting it out there now, and I'm never gonna say anything about it again unless
Okay,
anybody
I'll
else
write it
says
down.
After we get the
Yep.
Kenema overlay resource zone fixed, that's what we gotta do first.
That's
I have
on the
another
list.
Another question.
Go right ahead.
I'm not sure who gave out the percentages. What's in the city, 24% is R10, 17%, right? Who said that? Was that?
I did, it's in the memo that we
Okay.
put together.
So if we have a property like this where we're saying, okay, we're determining whether it should be R8, but some of these are R6s and 7s, does that change this ratio, or are they all considered R8? If that's what we accepted as a zone change tonight. Obviously, some of them are 6, so does that change the percentages? You just know what I'm saying?
Oh, so no, I think this is a percentage by zoning category. This is not a percentage based on the individual lot size within the subdivision.
Throughout the
I'm
entire
not talking
city.
Throughout the
specific-
entire city.
That's what I was
Yeah,
asking.
throughout the
There's-
entire city.
This is based, I think, on the zoning category,
Of the entire city.
about not the number of lot sizes in those categories.
And the percentages you have are based on the world today, not if this subdivision's approved and the zoning changes.
Correct.
So the percentages of 24 R10 and 617 R8 will change. One will drop and one will raise after zone is approved, assuming that it's approved tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
So Christina, you mentioned that there was another condition that was requested to be changed. Did I write 31 down? Because I only see 30.
Right,
Yeah,
and
31 was the.
yeah, there was actually two pieces. The applicant came to
That
me
says
2 weeks
number
ago and
19.
asked for 2 conditions of approval, one that was related to PG easement. I had to let the applicant know that Development Services didn't recommend any revisions to that. So I won't go off on what the recommended, the requested.
But our condition.
But the second condition I'm adding
No,
tonight,
wait, the first condition that you just mentioned, we didn't change, which is which one?
number 19, which is on your
Okay,
dais, and that was presented at the September 25th
This
meeting.
doesn't have anything to do with PGE.
No. The PGE condition, actually I can find, staff was not recommending any changes.
Okay, and that's number which one?
But subsequent to my discussions with the neighbors, I would like to add condition approval 31 tonight, and that's not on your paper, but I'd like to read it again. Prior to platting, the applicant shall demonstrate that the subdivision complies with lot width and lot depth dimensional standards of the zone.
Okay, I'm good with that. Adding that. Just trying to find the PGE one.
Just to let you know, I did my brief numbers, and I have actually 65 lots are under 8,000. Some of them are just under, but there are 65 of the 77.
In the city.
No, of this
Of
proposed
Of the
application.
77.
So of 70, so there's 77.
65 are, and I can let the applicant confirm that. I was just trying to do my best to
So
count
that
everything.
means that there's only 12 that,
13, there should be only 13.
12 or 13 that meet,
Actually, 64, excuse me. Correct,
That are under
13.
yeah.
Under 8,000.
So there's 13 that meet or
Correct.
exceed 8,000?
3 of which are 25,000 plus.
Correct, and that is allowed by the code.
Yes.
It's kind of a low batting average there.
Yeah, who wrote that code?
Okay, and then my last question is, and I'll just throw it out there, open space. What is meant by that?
So the applicant, this is a bit unique because this normally doesn't happen. The applicant has submitted a subdivision with a voluntary open space. So we don't have any code criteria that requires
Which
open
means
space.
it's open for a dog park, it's open for a playground, it's open, what is it?
So as part of that open space, it's up to the subdivision and through the HOA to determine who gets to analyze. It's not a city park.
Okay,
So typically, we would see development put houses or lots in there, which they're opting not to do in this case.
right.
Is that because of under the wires, or is
No.
that anyway?
Nope.
They just,
They're proposing to do it on their own accord.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can let I know the applicant made the presentation about why, and I can let them speak to that again. But that was not a requirement of the subdivision, and it was voluntary on their end.
they're all in subdivisions.
Just forgive me, I'm just looking at the math here and trying to wrap my head around. So if you divide, let's see, let's do this quickly.
Do you need my calculator on my phone?
My phone's right behind me. So if we have 77, which is what I was trying to do at home, 77 total lots, and if half of them, so less than half of, well, not less than, not even half of the lots meet the minimum lot size because of this averaging.
Correct.
And only 13, like I said, there's some big ones, obviously, but that's, we didn't make them buy the piece of property under the power lines. So only 13 meet or exceed.
Once again,
Then, from a
Yeah.
legal perspective,
Yeah,
you
that's okay.
can't condition that, you have to accept it.
I'm not asking that question at all, I'm just thinking
doing
out
discretionary.
loud.
Right.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen?
No.
Okay, all right. The applicant, so before we call the applicants up, I just want to be sure that everybody is aware, we will be using the timer tonight, just like we said we were going to. Applicants, you are limited to 15 minutes. You have 5 minutes for rebuttal. However, you got a lot of people here that you want to have talk, so you figure out how to divide that up. The public will be 3 minutes. We will be, it's been decided by the commission that if you're getting to your point and you're wrapping up, we're not going to just pull you off the stage like they did with the little hook. So just be aware of that. And if you have something new that you would like us to know that you did not tell us last time, that would be really terrific. And please remember that we would like you to address the applicable criteria. So if you want to come up and tell us that you like it or you don't like it, that's really great, but that is not part of the criteria, unfortunately. So I, can't make that happen. So we'll go ahead and call the applicant up. So I have Chris, I have Monty, I have Don, and I have Todd.
And someone else.
No, these are the applicants.
Oh, okay.
She's not the applicant.
No, I didn't know you separated them, that's fine.
Oh, yes, we separate them all.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair McGriff, members of the commission, staff. we were thinking about how, there's a lot of people here who want to testify, and you had some questions, and we would like to reserve our time at the end, rather than say something now and then say something later. And could we reserve that time that we have and apply it towards rebuttal? Would that be okay?
I'm not in favor of that, but gentlemen, what do you want to do? You have your 15 minutes right now. Your rebuttal is 5 minutes. So whatever you guys want to do is the majority.
What's allowable?
I think we've got a format.
It's already-
Yeah, we set the procedure.
He gets his rebuttal at the end
Yeah.
of the new.
Yes, they get
presentation.
5 minutes for rebuttal at the end.
Right.
They have a 15-minute presentation.
Well, let's do the presentation.
Okay,
Because
So-
if they were to do the rebuttal, they don't get the 15, they only get the 5 still.
15
They wouldn't be
minutes.
added on,
that's,
okay.
no, we don't, it isn't cumulative.
Okay, just wondered.
Uh-oh, big boards.
Well, those are all gonna be stored at your house.
That's fine.
We can do this. Somebody could be your Vanna.
We have a-
Yeah, he's got some plats. Got the big plats.
Are these new or are they in the record?
They are not in the record.
Okay, so this is Exhibit 1 into the record, and actually, I'd like to say that Exhibit 2 is the revised condition of approval.
Okay, got it. We need a little exhibit stamp, so you can go like that and stamp them.
Is that something we have to read real quick while they're talking?
How does this work?
It's a picture.
Should
All right, so we're gonna
check in
switch
to
over
see if
to
it got clicked off.
presentation.
There it is. Thank you. Do I need
All
to?
stuck together.
Okay. So,
They're all the same.
Chris Goodell with AKS Engineering, for the record. Do I need to enter my address in again, or we're okay? All right, we don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to touch on some of the testimony that we heard at the last hearing, and that's what Monty has here in front of you, and what I had handouts. So there was some testimony that at the neighborhood meeting that we held with the South End Neighborhood Association that we didn't, we showed something different, or we didn't mention a zone change. And that seemed to resonate with a few of the planning commissioners. I want to make sure that we're super clear about what we provided or presented at the neighborhood meeting. And the very first thing I said when I started talking at the neighborhood meeting was we were doing a zone change, just like the 3 other different projects right in that area. And this here, which I gave to you, copies to you all, and that preliminary plat there is what we presented at the neighborhood meeting. Not so much as the square foot has changed. We included my neighborhood meeting notes, which is in the record, I guess, already, and then the South End Neighborhood Association meeting notes. And if you look at those, you'll see it says Chris Goodell reviewed the proposed Wheeler Farm subdivision, 23 acres, 77 lots. So it was the same. So I just want to make sure everybody understood that we weren't bait and switching. We showed exactly what we intended on doing, and that's what we presented then, and that's what we came through in the application. There was some testimony at the last hearing concerning whether or not all the elements of the public right-of-way, including sidewalks, were in the lots themselves, meaning the lots were deceivingly smaller than they were showed on the preliminary plat. And this drawing here demonstrates that all of the right-of-way elements, including the sidewalks, fall in the 54-foot wide right-of-way. So all the lots are exactly how big they are, and there's no sidewalks included in there. So we want to make sure that was clear. There was some testimony about parking, and there was concern about parking, and you know, we've been doing this a while. We've heard lots of comments about parking at different hearings, and wanted to be real clear that whether or not the zoning was R8 or R10, essentially the parking requirement is the same, and the same amount of parking could be provided. There's a 20-foot garage vehicle entrance setback in both zones, and that provides the parking on site. So just want to make sure we were clear on that. There was some discussion about the PGE easement. This easement was granted in 1963, and there were some questions on whether or not fences could go in the easement, and they certainly can. We provided a copy of the easement itself to staff. It was in the application material. So you can put a variety of things in there. Most of the restrictions are related to trees. They don't want big trees growing up into the power line. So we don't have anything in there that's going to interfere with that. Let's see, I guess there was some concern about some of the lots being, obviously we heard big, but some of them they have the easements going through them. And you can see here, we've kind of highlighted the PGE easement, and you can see lot 55 and 56 and 62 are impacted. So we kind of showed how, there's some typical building areas there. So 55 is really big, but it's got an area on the east side. 56 has two different areas you could build in. So you could build a house further and back, or you could build it closer up front, or you could do both. And 62, there's plenty of room to build average size homes there. And just for some comparison purposes, this is the Highland Park subdivision, and it shows that it's a similar situation. You can look at lot 20 or lot 32 or lot 24. Those are all pretty big lots, and they're heavily impacted by the same easement. And they're built, I think lot 32 has a house on it, and I think maybe that person might have been here at the last hearing, and some of those other ones are getting houses built on there, and they just adjust. I guess related to density, because that's really what we're talking about. There's lot size and whatnot, but we wanted to provide a comparison of the surrounding area there. We have shown all these recent projects here. We got Ed's Orchard, Central Point Crossing, Payson Farms, Highland Park, our project Wheeler Farms, and then Hazel Creek Farms. In here, we have a chart that shows, the number of lots in the subdivision, what the zoning is, and the average lot size in each one of those projects. So if you look with average lot size, we're very similar to the first 5 projects there. And if you look at the minimum lot size, we're also similar to several of them. I guess what I find the most interesting thing on this project is it lists out the density. So the gross density, meaning how big your property is and how many lots. So you take the number of lots that you have and you divide it by your acreage, and it spits out a number and tells you really how many dwelling units per acre you have on a property. And this here illustrates that out of those 6 projects, the least dense obviously is Hazel Creek Farms. Ours is Wheeler Farms is the next least dense. And the others, Ed's Orchard being the most dense. And some of that project is actually zoned R10. So it doesn't always matter what your zoning is. Density is density. And so this project here, Wheeler Farms is not more dense than the surrounding projects. And I think Monty had a few things to say. There's already been a lot of conversation about this code section that we have listed up here, but Monty had a few things to say too.
Yeah, so my name is Monty Hurley. I'm also with AKS Engineering. I'll kind of touch on a number of topics here. With regard to density, if you look at this property and you include the voluntary open space park, and you include a portion of the property that the Wheeler family is actually retaining, not developing this time, at R10, maximum density is about 74 lots. This project proposes 77 lots with an R8 zoning designation. There was concern about the lots adjacent to the Hazel Creek Farm subdivision. If you look at the plat map, those lots are all between 7,000 and 8,000 square feet. With an R10 zoning designation, those lots could all be 8,000, which is not much different than what's proposed in this project. With this zone change, it enables us to provide the open space park, preserve some trees that are important to the Wheeler family, have been good citizens in Oregon City here for many years, provide a plan that has densities comparable with the surrounding properties as shown here. We've been doing work in Oregon City for an awful long time. A lot of these projects we actually designed. I remember designing the Hazel Creek Farm subdivision. So I laid that thing all out. We did it all with 10,000 square foot lots at the time because the city code didn't allow for the lot averaging, didn't allow for that 20% reduction. After that project was approved and some other ones, City Commission chose to change the code. And they did that because they wanted diversity in lot sizes and home types. They wanted flexibility in layout given site geometry and other constraints, which is what we have on this project. With regard to Hazel Creek Farms, this slide shows connectivity again, which we've touched on. It has, 4 or 5 ways out of this project, not overburdening any of the local streets on any of the surrounding projects. The Orchard Grove Drive, if you look back historically, and I know this because right after this project got preliminary plat approval, actually prior to going through the final plat process, Orchard Grove Drive was actually designated on the city's TSP as a collector. You can see it there in that dashed green line. It didn't function as a collector, and so in the current TSP, it's actually been removed. But if you look at the local streets and the thresholds for trips on a local street and those kinds of things, none of these streets are getting anywhere close crossing that line. The traffic is not, within the neighborhoods, is not going to be overwhelming. We have a traffic engineer here that can tell you a lot more detail about that if you need.
Yeah, I guess so, we're just going to close on a couple of things we touched on at the last hearing. Some of the project highlights here, a big deal is the open space tract. It's, you asked about what it would be. It could be a variety of things. When we met with city staff at the pre-app, we asked about it being a city park, and staff wasn't interested in it being a city park, but we did ask, and so it's going to be owned and maintained by the homeowners association for the subdivision. So it's going to be for tree preservation, open space. That's the plan. I guess we've said it here a couple times, but neighborhood connectivity here, Orchard Grove Drive is one of several ways in and out of this site. You've got a variety of ways that people can get in and out, and it's not going to overburden any one street. And we've been on the other end of the spectrum where we've had one street coming into a project, and it's a tough situation. This here really makes a lot of sense with all the connections that are provided. So real quick, I just listed some of the approval criteria here for the zone change, and I guess in terms of applicant's burden, we produced it. This is the application. There's a lot of work went into this. A lot of time and effort went into this. This has all the information that we've been discussing here this evening. All the findings, talking about the comp plan policies, the goals, the development, the municipal code criteria, everything is in here. And if you have questions about specifics, we were certainly happy to answer. But this project is consistent with the comp plan. It's R10 to R8. We met with city staff and we've discussed all the public services and facilities, and they're there to support the project, including schools. Wes Rogers, the superintendent, was at the pre-app, and we talked with him, and we asked him if he had any concerns, and he said he didn't. So we've looked into that, and the materials are here. Finally, I guess with traffic, I've been doing this for a long time. Every project, there's always concerns with traffic. I've seen it, people with a 2-parcel partition, just concerns about traffic. So in this case, we had a traffic engineer put together a big part of this here is a traffic study, and found that the streets could accommodate the traffic, a big part of it being all the connections that we have. And the city's traffic engineer confirmed that in their findings, and that's in the staff report. So we want to thank you for your time. I think Don Wheeler has 3 minutes here, and he wanted to say a few other things.
Yeah, my name's Don Wheeler. Address is 19898 South White Lane, and I'm one of the sellers of the Wheeler Tree Farm property. I would like to remind the commission that my parents purchased this land in 1963 when there were only 4 homes adjoining our property. Right now there are 260 homes with various zonings of R10, R8, and the smaller lots we see in the Payson Farm neighborhood. The Wheeler family has never spoken against any of the housing projects, including the Filbert Orchards of both Westling Farms across Central Point Road and the Fensky Orchard that is now Hazel Creek Farms. These two cleared orchards alone have provided homes for over 200 families. The question is, why did we not resist? We fully understand the metro-urban growth boundary. By limiting growth to within the boundary lines, we realize that many benefits to cities that are providing services, and we create neighborhoods within our existing cities. The fact that we can all drive a quarter of a mile to the south from this subject property and be fully in farm and open pasture land is a blessing. I am far happier living with the urban growth boundary than I would be living in other western cities that enjoy urban sprawl and unlimited growth. The Portland area is obviously a very desirable place to live with a limited supply of land, and my father came to realize that the highest and best use of this land is for housing. At this point, I need to tell the Planning Commission that the R8 zoning change that you are debating is apparently wrong. Totally unsolicited, I was told by 3 different landowners from the property to our northeast that the petition gatherers opposing the Wheeler property was going to have lots as small as 5,000 square feet, and we would be building row houses. This is, of course, not true, and this application is for R8 single-family dwellings, and is designed to meet the criteria of the existing city code. The Hazel Creek Farm landowners are indeed pleased with the neighborhood they live in, as it can be perceived as nearly a gated community. Due to the urban growth boundary on the east and the toll strip and Wheeler properties to the south, the only traffic this neighborhood has had has been their own homeowners, since all of the streets had been dead ends. It should come as no surprise, though, that this situation would not last forever. Most any available land within the Portland metro area community is being used for new housing. The R8 zoning change that we are requesting is very reasonable, considering 2 of the most recent home developments that touch the subject property of the west are now zoned the same. Central Point Crossing and Highland Park neighborhoods were both recently approved by the city. As members of the Planning Commission are aware, the Metro Regional Council encourages even greater density within the city boundaries. The R8 zoning, along with the open space, the stormwater facility, and the existing topography of the land, creates a plan that allows for a variety of lot sizes for homes to be built. I believe the lot plan before you meets all of the criteria presented by AKS and the city staff recommendations for approval of the zone change. All of the homes that have been built to the west of us are very high quality and have created a nice
Don,
neighborhood.
wrap it up, the light's flashing.
Finally, I would address the comment, we were just trying to create as many lots as possible. The decision by the Wheeler family to ask Ryan Park Development to partition off the open space in this plan demonstrates we're willing to receive less income from the sale. This area of land would accommodate at least 3 additional lots. We would strongly believe in the value of open space to the nourishment of body and soul, and we've experienced on this land over the last 54 years. The Planning Commission is well aware very few projects of the city have voluntarily included an open space, and therefore we are very unique. And I will stop my comments at that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
It has done.
Do you want to submit the written record to the file?
I can do that.
Gentlemen, do you have any questions?
I just wanted to confirm, did I hear you correctly say that at R10 you would have 74 lots and at the R8 you would have 77 lots? Did I hear you say that?
That's what I wrote down.
The application has 77, and at R10, if you negated the open space and didn't, you could have 73 or 74?
So it's only 3 homes difference is what I'm asking?
Right, between this project and that, yes.
Okay, thanks.
And how many lots below 8,000?
There were 64.
64.
64.
Yeah.
So you're asking for an R8 zone?
Correct.
And 64 lots are below R8?
That's right. I'll take your word for it. I didn't calculate because it's not been a criteria, and it's an average, so that's how the average worked
That's
out.
83% or less
Yeah,
than
we
8,000.
had a lot of questions asked, so that's why I asked the
Yeah.
question, so
I
that
just wanted
it
to
could
confirm.
be answered.
No, that's fine.
And one last question, you're not proposing any sidewalks in this? Or you are? Did I miss that?
There'll be sidewalks on every single
Yes.
street, yes.
Okay, all right, then I missed
I get the question that were you at the, I don't know, I'm not sure, Commissioner Mahoney, were you at the last hearing?
Yes, he was.
Okay, he was,
I
okay.
just
There was a,
missed it, sorry.
sorry about that. There was a person that spoke that was unclear or didn't think that the lot sizes that we had shown were correct and that we had sidewalks within the lots. And the point of this slide here was really to show both, a plan view on the upper left and then a cross-section on the upper right. And you can see that on plan view, all the streets are 54 foot of right-of-way and inside, and so everything outside of the right-of-way would be the lots. And then inside the right-of-way holds the sidewalk, the planter strip, the street trees, the curb, the gutter.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
So I actually have a question for you. So Christina, I thought we were dedicating a 60-foot right-of-way, including curb.
No, it should be a local street.
That's what I thought, local streets were 60.
Yeah, local streets are 54.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 32-foot wide, typical, parking on both sides.
Right, so I appreciate if you want to put the slide back up where you were doing the lot comparisons from the other developments.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, so the only thing that I take objection to on this is number 3 is a PUD. I wouldn't include that. That's not a fair comparison because a PUD has different requirements than a subdivision. So I looked at this and I just took number 3 out because that,
Yeah. But it is still
Yeah.
a local impact, and that's what he's showing,
Yeah, yeah.
so.
so,
It was just strictly showing lot sizes, because the main comment we were hearing about lot sizes, so here's some lot sizes.
so I know that my esteemed colleague, what?
Have one question to the application?
Yes, can I finish what I'm saying?
Sure.
I was going to ask him a follow-up question.
Okay.
My esteemed colleague, John Replinger, knows that I have sort of a pet peeve about traffic, and although it is probably very true that this development is not going to generate traffic, what we never do in our community is we never look at the off-site impacts. So all of this traffic is going to funnel down to Malala, to 7th, to Singer Hill, to South End. So it is going to create a traffic impact in our community, regardless of whether you think your traffic engineer says it's not going to create one in this development. They only have 3 ways off the hill. That is all going to dump down in certain parts of the community, including this neighborhood. So that really, to me, is kind of a misnomer that is not going to generate any traffic, because it certainly is.
I'm sorry, I don't
No,
know,
it's
did I
not
say that we didn't, we're going to generate traffic?
No, you said that the traffic impact from the development is not going to cause for the surrounding area. So again, I'm just saying, I agree with what you're saying, but we never look in this community at the off-site impacts, which affect other areas of our community, because we only have the 3 ways to get off from up there to down here. And not everybody's going to Canby. So it's just a point, so, sir.
I guess I could offer some
Yeah.
response.
Yeah,
and
there's really no response. It's
can I
just a
just jump in
reality.
there a
It's
little
just a
bit?
reality of what happens.
If you would like, we can bring up John Replinger, our city's transportation consultant, and he can explain the difference between the TSP and then the approval criteria for development, because we do take it into account. And so I really want to make sure that the public is aware of that. There are studies that are done that assume maximum development of the city, and we do take a look at those. Trips
I
put
understand.
all together as a whole and how they affect that. And then we create projects and we put them on our transportation system plan. And then as development occurs, we make sure that we're always
I
watching
understand
that.
that. I understand from our city engineer that we're going to expect, I won't say we are expecting, and we have currently in our community, increased congestion and traffic stacking and platooning. It's already here. I've read the TSP. I understand what the TSP is saying. I'm just making a general comment that, again, there may not be any small impacts, but you add all of these developments together and it impacts the entire city. So it's a bigger, broader impact that our criteria does not address. And again, it's a pet peeve. Again, when you're a planner, you know too much and you know what these things are. So, Mr. Johnson, forgive me.
Yes.
Please go right ahead.
A question or a clarification to make sure I'm thinking right, lot size in an R8, I don't think there's any criteria in our code that says how many have to be above R8. It's an average type thing.
That's,
Says,
yes,
so
that's why when the question was asked how many lots were under, I wouldn't know the answer, and neither did Christina, because it's not.
But to calculate that out, and I understand for clarification to calculate that out, but there is really no criteria to measure what number have to be above that level or below that level. It's just an average across the whole.
Correct, in that all your
Subdivision.
lots stay within the 20% size.
Right, as
So
long as they
64
stay
under.
within a 20% size. Yes.
That's,
I have another question, I didn't get to finish mine.
okay.
Between the R10 and R8, you said 3 homes. How does that mean there's more open space? I mean, I'm trying to figure out why if you go to R10, there's only 3 less homes. Now I'm going, is it spread out in a different way or something? You'd think you'd have a lot more space.
Well,
Let me try to answer and then just.
I can answer that question if you'd like. So, when you're laying out a subdivision, you have the gross area, you got the number of lots. That dwelling units per acre is a pretty key number. It's how many dwelling units you're getting per gross acre. When you lay in your streets, you gotta net that out when you're working with lot areas, right? So, in this case here, we voluntarily, the Wheeler family, voluntarily gave a park of 1.35 acres or whatever that number is. You carve that into our 10 lots.
Oh, is that how it goes?
There's also a portion of property that the Wheelers are not developing at this time. They're just retaining it. The Wheeler family is. You could develop that into our 10 lots. So you add those together and you do the math and you can get R10 maximum density of 74 lots.
Okay,
So you compare that to what we're actually proposing, and there's 3 lots difference.
okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we bring the public up?
I do have.
Yes, please, go right ahead.
I haven't been able to, I don't know if OC Web Maps isn't working or whatever, but your 3 lots that you have that are really long, 51, 52, 53, last time there was some testimony that there was like contours or what, it just, the land didn't make sense to try to like carve things down lower. So I was curious, what is the land issue that's got them so long and narrow? Is it the canyon dropping off, or is it just, it's marsh, or,
It's not a marsh.
yeah, I assumed you'd have an overlay district if you had that problem, but.
So that butts up against the urban growth boundary, and why the urban growth boundary is there is it drops off in the back. So it's topography and sanitary sewer. So the steep topography makes it very difficult to develop those into lots.
You'd have
in
to
the
do
back.
terracing and all sorts of stuff like that.
And then you'd have to pump those homes for sanitary sewer.
All right, I just, we have a really nice system, OC Web Maps, and we can put contours and stuff on. And for some reason, when I clicked, your whole development just became a gray box, and I couldn't get any contours or anything. Zoning, nothing, it just was a gray box, so I don't know if that's my.
It seems to always happen when you need it. That's how
Yeah, so I was just curious because I didn't walk through your property to look at it, I drove where I could, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, gentlemen? Okay, all right, thank you so much, and we'll see you in a little bit, I guess.
Great. Thank you for your questions. We appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, Brenda Wheeler,
Going out of order?
you got put on top. There's no order. I could just throw them up and make 52 pickup, and then they'd all,
If they're, what's in the
Come
record,
up.
no.
You
There's
don't want
no.
Can we go back one slide?
Sure, absolutely. Which,
Do you want to?
The, whoops, back.
this one?
No.
Criteria for
There.
frontage? Okay, yeah.
yeah, your time's
Okay.
not starting yet, don't worry.
Yes, I'm Brenda Wheeler, and I live on Orchard Grove Drive. I'm at the end of the street right now and looking forward to having a through street so we can get our trailer in and out, which we can't currently do. As far as the transportation goes, between the last meeting and this meeting, I was coming up Lynn Avenue headed home and got up by the school, and instead of doing the school zone speed, I came to a screeching stop. Sat there. After a few minutes, I looked at the clock. I sat there at that point for over 20 minutes before I was able to make the turn and then get on Central Point. So I would submit that at this point, that has already failed, that that's not a normal sort of time frame. So I think.
Was this, what day? Weekday?
It was a weekday. It was about 20 minutes after school got out. So it wasn't right there. There was still a stray school bus or two. But really, that wasn't the issue anymore because the kids had walked off, the buses for the most part had gone, and that's what it was. And that's, you know, not in the neighborhood, but it's getting into and out of the neighborhood. So yes, there's a plan to fix that someday in the future, but at this point, it's not fixed. And it's probably not going to be fixed when the subdivision is complete. So I think that that is a transportation issue that really does talk to quality of life. Because if it's going to take you a half hour just to make that little corner, and it can be the same thing coming out in the morning. I've hit that and sat and sat and sat, and multiple lights and multiple lights. So I think we're to the failure at those critical times of day when everyone is coming and going. And as far as the parking issue goes, the issue isn't so much the driveway length. The problem is, what do you do with the cars that don't fit on the driveway? We have an extra extension that we park our trailer and a utility trailer and an extra vehicle on. And still sometimes we end up with vehicles on the street. So with the narrow width that an R8 allows for, those cars are going to have to go further and further away from their homes. It was interesting. I happened to turn on one of those court TV shows, the People's Court, and the issue was people fighting over parking in front of their houses. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's what's going to happen to us when this thing's built. And it wasn't anything we anticipated or thought about, but with so many cars trying to park in such a small area, there's going to be some conflict that isn't really necessary if things are spread out just a tiny bit more. And as far as having a park that we can't use and aren't allowed in, we already have one of those in the neighborhood. That isn't a benefit to those of us living there. It doesn't improve our quality of life. So the fact that they're fond of a particular area doesn't help us. And the lots along the Wheeler property, well, they'll get developed next time when the urban growth moves again. So that's not really going to be helpful either. So anyway, I'd like you to think about really the transportation issues and where cars go and how cars go. We're not going to have TriMet out there ever, probably. So it's going to be a problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Terry, do you want to come up with Lori, or do you want to just come up separately?
We're gonna get one too.
That's right.
You want to go or you want me to go?
You go first.
Can you, before I start, will you bring up the overlay
Sure, yes,
map of
you
the
can
plat
ask-
map
we-
of
we
that
don't-
orchard?
we have no control over
No,
that.
I'm just
Sure.
addressing
Christina can do it.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on, is
That
it
one,
going?
go back one, please.
That one?
The one that shows Ed's Orchard, I think it's the one that shows all
the layout?
the plat map.
This
Yeah,
one.
that one, thank you. My name's Terry Boyd. I live in the neighborhood that is adjacent to this project. We've heard a whole lot of crazy math tonight. Sounds an awful lot like Enron math. And you can end up with whatever you want in a mathematical formula if it's done without integrity. Now, I will tell you, from our standpoint, integrity on one side of this play has been infinitesimal. For those of you who are math challenged, that means less than zero, nada, nothing. We're counting on you and your integrity to look at this project, because you would have to be Mr. Magoo to look at that plat map and say that any single lot in there is an R8 lot, when you have an R8 lot right on the same plat map in Ed's Orchard. They look almost twice as big. It's unbelievable. It's 83% of those lots don't even fall at the R8 minimum of 8,000 square feet. It smells like 2008. More crazy math, money grab. We all know what happened in 2008 because of bad math, nonsense numbers with no integrity. Don't put Oregon City in that. This is a great little city. We invested heavily in this city, in that neighborhood 14 years ago. I brought up our property taxes are 8.4 million cumulatively of what we paid into the city coffers. Don't fall into that trap. I'll encourage you to look up Kaufman and Broad in Southern California. They went through this right before 2008. They had one media person who told the true story, not the fairy tale you're hearing here tonight, the true story. You know what ended up happening to them? They bulldozed down entire neighborhoods because they couldn't sell the houses. I will tell you, we have a pretty solid media partner. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I have a question for Chris. I'm Lori Boyd. I have a question for Christina. She said that subdivision in the real world. What does real world mean?
Oh, excuse me, as I said, you take the codes, which are these mathematical lot depths and width, and then as a applicant is looking at their property and trying to lay out a subdivision that meets all the code, there's the reality of the size of the lots, who's the neighboring subdivision, are there topography, is there is the connecting street, 100 feet off from where they want to connect up with, because we say you need to connect up with streets, but yet if they connect at the street, their block length is wrong. That often happens is by the time you connect up all the streets, you may not meet exactly the block lengths.
The real world right now is our neighborhood. It's not the one that you're trying to perceive as this glorious new neighborhood that's going to come in and where everyone's going to be happily ever after. There's no public transportation there. The schools, I had 5 boys I raised. The last one graduated in 2010. We used to go to teacher conferences, and I went to one where the teacher looked at my son and said, "You're in my class?" He didn't even recognize him. That's how overcrowded our school system is right now. I can't believe you want to bring all these people in to a place where there's no public transportation. The schools are inadequate to hold all these new children that are coming in. It just, and the last meeting I was here with, you walked in, the guy in the public transportation guy was sitting in front of me. You told him to give him the speech. You said, if you want to stay, you can stay and just give your speech and then you can leave. It's like you guys have already talked about the speech he was supposed to give. And it's going to be, the roads are going to be okay to handle all this transportation in 2030? What about now?
The traffic issue was addressed by your own engineer at the last meeting. He said his words exactly, our plan failed. We can't rectify it till 2035. That's one of the first things they teach you in law school. Don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. It was right in the last meeting, your own guy, his words. It failed. So I know exactly what it means to try to get out of that neighborhood, try to get off the hill. And I appreciate Commissioner McGriff for picking up on that, because what used to be, I go to work at 2:30 in the morning. I run into traffic every single morning coming off of South End Hill. That's ridiculous. That just means my neighbors are figuring out they have to leave earlier so they can beat the traffic. Otherwise, you sit on South End sometimes all the way to the top of the hill, down to the 4-way stop at the bottom. That's not that doesn't make this a sellable area. I mean, I'm proud of this place. I've done an awful lot to make Oregon City not only fundraise for this city, but I've put it on the map on a daily basis, talking about the quality of life here. You guys have a huge project coming up downtown. Spent a lot of time talking about it. This is an unbelievable place. Don't turn it into every other lame neighborhood because someone's giving you a cry story about, oh, I can make more money this way.
Before you go on, you're eating her time.
Sorry. Okay, but anyways, it seems like Christina and Carrie are both giving the developer so much leeway. They don't have any specific plans on what they're going to do with that open space. It's just open to whatever they want to develop it into. that's not something we have, they're just like, okay, go at it, have it. And I don't agree with that. And then, that's okay.
We ate up some of your time, so.
Yeah, but, you know, and they say, the Wheeler said not less than, you know, he even said that he's going to keep his farm and he's going to live, but he's going to move away from everyone else. He doesn't want to live with other people surrounding him. He even said that.
Yep, yeah, make sure you get in the mic.
He even said that. And I also know one of Wheeler's granddaughters. She works with Northwest Kitchen and Bath. She was going to do our kitchen. She said that her family that Grandpa wanted all the kids to have a set there, and that's what he wanted to do with that farm, was to have all his relatives live there and develop and grow there together, not sell it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, before I call it the next person, the proposed development is going to have a homeowners association, and they are the ones that are going to be determining what the open space is going to be. That's correct? Nod? That's exactly what I heard. Yep. Okay, so just for the record, it's not going to be nothing. It'll be something. So I'm hoping I'm going to get this right. Is there a Richard Durr in the audience? Because I'm so sorry, I couldn't read your handwriting. So I guessed. Anyway, thank you, Richard. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Richard Durr, resident since 1993, original owner in Hazel Creek Farms. Two kids through high school here, and one is currently in high school. The first time we came out to visit Wheeler's farm, we started coming out about 1990. They were building some houses in Sunset Springs, and my exact words is, I would never live this far out here. A few years later, we moved in to Sunset Springs, lived there for 10 years, and then moved across the street to what we found to be a very beautiful neighborhood in Hazel Creek Farms. We keep talking about how the applicant meets R8, but I've never heard why we need to change from R10 to R8. It seems like most of the time you have to provide an argument on why I can't meet the current criteria. It also seems like we, and I could be wrong, but voted to annex that into the city, and when it was annexed, it was proposed R10. So it's very disappointing to hear that R10 is a placeholder when you look at a zoning map and you see is R10. If it's just a placeholder and doesn't mean anything, I think it might change people's voting for annexation. You know, the comp plan, I believe, showed R10. We're asking for R10 or R8, and I just keep hearing that, well, we meet that criteria, but why not meet the R10? With the smaller lots, thank you for addressing some of the parking issues. I would argue that a 36-foot wide street with 2 cars parked on each side of the street does not allow 2 cars to pass. Driving through some of the neighborhoods, that can be a problem coming on people who aren't paying attention. Let me also go back and say that I think a lot of these problems are not just to our neighborhood. I think you've touched upon that City of Oregon City needs to take a hard look at some of these regulations, because it's just going to continue to expand at a rate that is uncontrollable or well thought out. I appreciate everyone talking about the traffic, because going down South End Road in the morning, being backed up to the top of the hill, going one car at a time is very frustrating. I'm sure that happens at 7th Street and 213 and I-205. I would venture to say that most of our intersections are probably failing at peak times, and to not take that into account seems very short-sighted. In order to have a place to live, you've got to be able to get to the roads, and since we've been here in 93, there's been no new roads down to Highway 99. When South End Road above Kanema slides off the hill or gets closed for repairs, it's going to be a mess trying to get down to the bottom of the hill. So what I heard was that there would be a park, and then I heard that there's an open space. I would hope that a condition be that there is a park in place that is supported by a homeowners association and maintained. Our neighborhood pays homeowner association fees to maintain the public right-of-way, the street frontage along Central Point, and in order to have some sort of control over our neighbors, instead of just parking their cars out on the road and leaving them, I would hope that we could, make that a condition and that they maintain that park. Otherwise, it'll be a field of unmowed grass. I would just like the commission to consider these points, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Is there, I don't recall seeing, is there one of the conditions that address the open space?
Well, we don't have any criteria about the design of the open space. But let me grab the staff report.
But we do have like state or city rules about it can't just be in tall grass because it's a fire hazard.
Well, we have city code enforcement about tall
Right.
grass, and that would be for citywide, no matter if you are an open space or a single-family lot.
Right.
Yeah, we don't allow
it. But it just, it can't turn into a trash dump or
Correct, that's irrespective of being a lot, that's just not allowed in the city.
Right,
And
yeah.
solid waste and weeds, by our city code enforcement would be in place.
right. So I just wanted to make sure that there are some protections in place irrespective of whether it's a specific condition.
So, Mr. Marsh, you're next, sir. Can you hear okay?
Oh, I can hear good.
Okay, I was just concerned because last time we needed a little extra assistance.
And that worked good.
Good, thank you so much.
Okay. Yes, I was here last meeting, and at that time I told you that I have been in construction for 45 years of building homes on lots. Our 8 lots had 8,000 square feet. Our 10s had it. You've got a different ruling. I guess I've got to understand that. But we'll listen to these ladies ruling and saying 8,000 square foot lots can be 6,500 and smaller. 90% of them is flat ridiculous, ladies. Leave this thing at 10,000 square feet. They can still build 8,000 square foot homes on it. I guess I have to accept that, but that's where you should leave it. Leave it at 10,000 square feet. Let them put 8,000 square foot lots on. Let them stop ripping us off with 6,500. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Howard Burge.
What was the name?
Howard Burge, B-U-R-G-E.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Howard Burge. I live on Hazeldale Drive. And I guess when I looked at this thing, it kind of, a number of things bothered me. One, when you typically look at a city planning thing, it doesn't make much sense to me that as you reach the urban growth boundary, you have small lots. It seems like it should be starting to get larger lots as you start to reach the edge of the boundary. And this is going exactly the opposite. Also, when you'd approved Ed Orchard in the past to go to 8,000, you required a 10,000 square foot lots that were adjacent to Hazel Creek that are 10,000 square foot lots. The engineering company knew this because they did the same thing. But in this one, if you look at the ones that are adjacent to the Hazel Creek lots, 10,000 square foot lots, they're much smaller. So that doesn't make much sense to me. And then also, there was a lot of talk about diversity of size of the lots, size of the houses and stuff. With your 20% variance that you allow on a 10,000 square foot lot, you still get diversity. So you're just creating even a group, you're getting what you're asking for at 10,000 square foot. It doesn't make any sense to go to 8,000 square foot and make smaller lots, again, as you're near city limits. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. We're just gonna take a minute.
Well, somebody else
We just
logged in and I
we just
don't
all got
log
logged off.
myself in. Sorry. Happens when you let somebody else log in for you.
Uh-oh. Bob Kelly, you wanna slowly come up? Really slow?
remember what I like about you. Jeez, it's a long walk home.
I have my car, I'll give you a lift.
No, I drove. He's walking. Bob Kelly, I live on Hazel Creek Drive, I think it is. But at least,
Shall I
unless my
check?
wife called ahead, and that's
Orchard
always,
Grove
that's
Drive,
always a
it
given,
says.
yeah.
Okay, one of those drives.
Yeah. I started out with just 4 or 5 things on my notes, but with reference to the, I'm going to start with the parking on this, with the smaller lots and the houses. The smaller houses provide you smaller storage areas to put your stuff, so your stuff goes in the garage. You can't put the car in the garage, it goes out on the street. If you got 2 cars, you're in good shape. If you got 3, the third one's on the street. Having the privilege of living on the S-curves, going through there, as that, there's only 3 ways out of where this is going to be. So provides a problem. One of the questions I had was, doesn't the urban growth boundary require that you have 10,000 square foot lots as you border the boundary?
No.
I'm asking for clarification. I kind of thought that, I heard that that was kind of a holding thing earlier, so that kind of clarified that for me. But one of the main concerns of being the president of the HOA that I've talked with my constituents about is the value of the properties because of the density that's not going to be comparable to where we have with surrounding it. You know, across the street, on the other side of Central Point, where you're at 10,000, we're at 10,000. And to leave it at 10, as it was mentioned, to go to an 8,000 square foot lot makes sense. The math, as mentioned earlier, you know, if you got 24,000 square foot lot and you're going to be able to use that, you know, are you going to build on that full 24,000, or are you just taking that lot and making a section of it applicable? The intent of the rule, I don't believe, is being applied in this particular situation. The advantage of the rule is being taken care of. The traffic getting off the hill, Mr. McGriff is very well taken. I've timed myself trying to get on to Warner Parrott to be able to make the left-hand turn to get on to Lynn at 6:30, at 7, at 7:30, and at 8. It's a minimum of 4 to 5 lights. You're going to add 77 homes, 2 cars, 2-car families. You got another 144 cars you're adding to that traffic jam. And that's just trying to get somewhere off the hill. With the addressing the 4 additional lots, and I may have not heard clearly back there, but the factors that were included in that were properties that are not being developed under this particular request. I mean, you know, it doesn't make sense. So speed limits coming through the neighborhoods, you know, we currently drive at 15 to 20 miles an hour through our neighborhood. And they're correct, the only people that drive through us are our residents, with the exception of the dump trucks. When their GPS system says that you can come off of McCord and get into the development to Ed's Orchard by using the streets. And one of the things that always amazed me is when I got the chance to talk with the staff about what was going on, and the project manager, the one that they sent me said that this is what it's supposed to be, and it showed coming out of the orchard with the truck to drive down our street. So, you know, being aware of what's going on makes a big difference. You guys have a big challenge ahead of you. For the 91 homes in Hazel Creek Farms, and we've got to be good friends with our friends over in Westland Farms because they share our concerns. For that, we thank you because we are now a stronger group. And there's just so many things that I wrote down, and I know I only got 3 minutes, and I don't want to take any more of your time. So I thank you for that. And once again, we do, you know, go with the 10,000 square foot. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
The projector has decided to be passive aggressive.
You're just going to put it all the way up and then put it all the way down?
I'm going to have to turn it off and turn it on again. I apologize,
Okay, go ahead.
everybody. And because that's just how machines work.
So wait, there's more.
Might as well stay up. I'm gonna call you next. Might as well stay up here. I'm gonna call you next.
I just turned the thing in.
I know. You're next.
On the line.
You're next.
No. Every now and then, bureaucracy moves quickly.
Rarely.
Only when you're not prepared.
My name is Mike Mitchell. I'm an Oregon City resident, and I'll start by saying that I don't have a geographic axe to grind on this. I live clear on the other side of town. I do live in a subdivision of 8,000 square foot lots, backed up to a subdivision of 6,000 square foot lots. And there is a huge difference. With an 8,000 square foot lot, you every once in a while get houses that are further apart than the 2 5-foot setbacks. On a 6,000 square foot lot, they're all 10 feet apart. I think the sound just went out.
I know. Just hang on a second.
Okay.
You will not be losing your time. We're just having technical difficulties right now. It's just, it is what it is. You know, we're okay.
Anybody have popcorn?
I thought you were bringing it. As they say, talk amongst yourselves. It'll come back down in a minute, I'm assuming.
We can do shadow puppets, and here's where the lot is, right?
It's pretty good. I'm impressed.
You have to do that when
Just
you're waiting.
hang on, you're not losing any time.
Okay. I trust you to be, you're always fair.
We try to be. I think sometimes these things happen and they bring a little levity into the meeting where it's very serious and you just kind of like,
I know you're shocked, but apparently we have to unplug and then plug it in.
okay.
Must be
Should we just
Windows.
take a
You
little
can
recess?
or you can continue and then we'll
Well,
let you
she
know.
said he has no sound.
Oh, he'll get
Is it
sound.
There's
working?
sound.
Oh, now,
Yeah.
okay, it's back.
Okay.
Okay, and the reason I bring that up, you can't, I mean, it's very difficult to even landscape on a 6,000 square foot lot. And reason I bring that up is they may want to call this R8, but this is R6. If over 80% of the lots are R6, you're being asked to approve an R6 subdivision, the way it's going to feel when you walk through it. I'm going to paraphrase one of my favorite movies. You're in a tough spot because you're saddled with a code that didn't anticipate that an average could have a few huge lots and 80% be undersized. I know that's not what was intended. I mean, I had nothing to do with writing it, but I can't imagine that that's what was intended. What was intended was allow for the topographical conditions and so forth and a little bit of variance. I happen to believe that we should allow more variance in lot sizes. If you think about the interesting neighborhoods in Oregon City, it's where there's a difference in lot sizes, there's a difference in house sizes, rather than them all being so cookie cutter. That being said, 80% at 6,000 square feet in what they're calling an R8 subdivision, that just doesn't make sense to me. Just two other quick things. Just a question for Ms. Richter. The percentages that you gave, is that land area or is that the number of lots between R10, R8, and R6? Because my point is if it's land area, you might have almost the same number of lots in each of those, same number of housing units, because you're getting, obviously more lots on.
Right, it's land area. It's just straight land area. And
based
you're
on
right,
land
it
area.
doesn't take into account the lot averaging
Okay.
concept.
No, I didn't mean the lot averaging, but if you've got 30% is R10, that's going to be X number of houses. A smaller percentage of R8 might give you the same number of available housing units in less space, because they're taking up less space. The last thing I would say is on that open space, first off, obviously I believe in park and open space. I'm on the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. This is a bad situation waiting to happen. Ask the people that live next to the Filbert Run space, which is a park space, but has gone undeveloped for many years. It becomes a nuisance to the neighborhood. We've tried pocket parks in Oregon City. They become a burden on the local neighbors, and people drive and use them. The local neighbors end up resenting that open space in a way because they're having to maintain it, spend their money to maintain it, and other people come in and use it for free. So I'm not sure that they should be getting any credit for open space. As difficult as that is for me to say because of that I like open space, and my yellow light is coming on, and I think that's what I wanted to say.
Your red light is the one you have to worry about.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Okay,
I'm done.
Thank you, and thank you for persevering through the up and the down and
Yes, apologize.
all that.
Sometimes you gotta turn it off and turn it on again.
It just happens, you know, that's what happens in our house.
Oh, one more. Okay.
Okay, Brian, come on up. Lovely T-shirt, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh, 6 weeks ago. Commission, thank you. Board, thank you. Chair, and I want to just talk about that open space that the gentleman just mentioned there. I like open spaces too, but to me, it almost seems like it's a Mighty Python type thing. Like, we'll give them some open space. They'll go for that, the R8 then, right?
Nudge, you know.
And, excuse me?
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, exactly. So, a couple things I just want clarity. Do you guys know, or can I ask Mr. Wheeler, has the property been sold? Or is it pending?
We can hold that. We can't have Mr. Wheeler coming up right now, so.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if it's pending, because it's for sale. I may know some people that are interested.
That's not before us.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to know if that was pending. Number two, we were talking about the density of housings and stuff like that. That one slide that was up there, the Hazel Creek Farm was the only R10 that was up there. The Ed's Orchard, I believe, was there was a slight, I think there's 4 lots in there that are R10 and the rest are R8.
6, yeah.
And 6 and less up there. So if you start going through the map and you start looking at the R10s, there's very few R10s besides our neighborhood, Hazel Creek Farm, where I live. A lot of them are like 6 R10s over there. There's like 4 R10s. All the rest are R8s. And so when you were talking, Carrie was talking about creating housing and more, homes available, I guess. Right now on Zillow at zip code 97045, there's 150 homes that are for sale right now in that zip code. So there's homes available. And then just the final thing I have to say is the bowling alley lots, the ones that you could actually land like an ultralight. I don't think those should be considered a lot. I don't think those, I think we're really getting taken advantage of the whole dollar cost averaging of those are lots compared to all the rest of the lots in there. Those aren't actually lots, those are small farms. And the final thing is that why do we always have to downsize? How come we can't make it like an R20 or an RF? Where someone could have, a llama or a chicken. So we don't have to get up on Hazel Creek Farm, drive down a couple blocks and see a cow. Why not go ahead and just have a small, great little community instead of creating this funnel of everybody trying to get out with, of course, the traffic and everything like that, because there's only like 3 roads to get out on the Central Point. The rest are going through everybody's neighborhood. And that's about all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. West Susan Richter.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
It's been pretty entertaining this evening.
Yeah, I know that screen thing was.
I'm going to start off with a rebuttal to some things that the applicant has said that I said. And then whatever time I have left over, I'll go ahead and read my organized letter that I was planning on reading. Okay, when my house was being built, and my house is to the right of lot number 40, so I bordered the Wheelers' property. During the time my house was being built, my husband and my son went to check on our house, and all the 2 Wheeler families, spouses included, were on our property. And they were not very happy and were telling us that the correct property setbacks had not been used, and that our house was too close to their property. And it wasn't, definitely not a welcome to our neighborhood. You're building a nice house here. So shortly during the time that the house was being built, there were already some private property keep out signs. But about 5 more signs were put up, nailed into the trees, that not to enter into their property. That wasn't very welcoming either. And people that came to my house as it was being built noticed and made comments about those signs being put up. And then there's mostly trees along our borders between the Wheelers and us. And they're all been there for a long time, and they're very big. And so our house really doesn't see much of the Treeler property at all. But there was maybe a 10-foot spot that didn't have any trees. And so after our house was built, the Wheelers came and planted, I don't know, 5, maybe 4 fir trees on that one little strip of property that they could possibly see through and see our house. And so that didn't make us feel like we were very welcome. I always felt like they were not happy with this development going in. Grandpa Wheeler then put up a wire fence along my house property line and their property line. And when my son did on occasion go over into their property playing with his friends, he was in grade school at the time, the Wheelers came over and were very unhappy that he was over in their trees and they didn't want him to be over there. And Grandpa Wheeler had said that he was putting up the wire fencing because the people on our development at Christmas time were probably all going to come over and steal trees from them because we had spent all of our money on expensive houses and couldn't afford to purchase our Christmas tree. It was said that I had told neighbors as I went around and talked to them that they were building row houses. And I don't know where they got their information about what I said or any of my communications that I have sent out to my neighbors. But I did tell my neighbors that I had 11 lots next to my lot going down the road that are 60-foot wide lots. And, you know, that could be construed as being row houses compared to the rest of my street going the other way that all have about 100 square foot dimensions on the roadside. And I never told anyone that they were building 5,000 square foot lots. So I'm feeling misquoted, and that there isn't a lot of credibility in what is being said, which I have felt also applies to the credibility on the averaging of the lots. So, oh, it's red already.
You can go over it a little bit.
Can I? Okay. This is what I wrote. When my neighbors voted to bring the Wheeler property into the city, it was zoned R10. Now it is being proposed to change the zoning to R8. One of my neighbors pointed out at the last meeting that since our development was built, there hasn't been another R10 development built. I think it is time for another R10 development. I believe that the change in the zoning is being driven by money, not for the quality and attractiveness of Oregon City. The city says that it wants new building to be cohesive to the adjoining neighborhoods. For our neighborhood, that would be a development of R10 to join us. The difference in setbacks makes a big difference in the looks of the neighborhood. I hope that you have driven around neighborhoods to see the comparison. The city wants a variety of neighborhoods, but since 2003 has only approved smaller sized lots. Our neighborhood is an asset to Oregon City and attracts people that support improving the city and schools. Think about the last time the school district was able to pass funding for them. We need the kind of people that our neighborhood attracts. I have spent more time looking at the plot map. I still feel the dimensions of some lots were used to qualify the development as R8. That's been talked to a lot, so I'll pass that. But I was going to say that there are 65 lots that, and I counted and counted to make sure I was right, that are not even 8,000 square foot lots out of the 77. And then I was curious about lot 6. It's an odd-shaped lot, and I wondered what size of a house could possibly be built on that lot with the setbacks. And then we talked about lot 55 and 56 and 62, and we're told tonight that they could have a fence, but can they have a play structure, a shed? Really, I think we need more information on what the part of those lots that are easements for utilities can really be used by the person who purchases the lot. And lot 51, 52, 53, the bowling alley lots, we were told at the last meeting that the back section of those lots is not usable or buildable because of the topography. Well, then why was that included in the size of the lot if whoever buys it cannot do anything with them? And I have no idea how steep it is, but I know I own the property behind my lot, all that property over behind Orchard Grove, and I know that it's pretty steep, that, you know, the kids can't even go out and play on it. Okay. Then the transportation engineer report says that Orchard Grove Drive will now be a principal new street. We are concerned about how much traffic will increase on the street and the speed cars will drive. We can hear the cars speeding on Central Point Road, especially at night. The plan is that Orchard Grove Drive will help take new traffic to ease congestion on Central Point. If you have driven Orchard Grove Drive through our neighborhood, you will see that there are a couple curves in the road that make it not suitable to be a main arterial street for traffic any heavier than what currently uses the road.
Are you just about done?
Yes.
Yeah, she's close.
Okay.
I hope you have driven Central Point Road, and as you were driving, you were attentive to the bumps in the road as you were driving. When the transportation engineer calculated the trip generation, it is based on 77 homes. Are the 77 homes added to the 41 homes already started being used for the calculations? On the entire piece of property that is being developed, it will be 118 new homes with 2 developments. The report also says that the new homes will produce 57 additional peak AM car trips and 76 additional peak PM car trips. Most families have 2 cars and most families have 2 working adults. I can't agree with the estimated additional amount of traffic. At the last meeting, it was said that in the plot map, there's property that is not being built on, so the Wheelers have a buffer between them and the new development. Why not build a premier development in Oregon City that the Wheelers and the Hazel Creek Farm neighborhood welcome as neighbors instead of a neighborhood we don't want to be a part of? Many people have fond memories of the Wheelers and the Tree Farm. Use the Wheeler property as a neighborhood that represents the Wheeler family well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Alice? Ms. Hayden, come on up.
Alice Hayden, and I live on Orchard Grove Drive. And when Oregon City voted to bring this development into the city, we accepted a traffic issue that we already had. So I'm not going to speak to the traffic one because it doesn't make any difference R8 or R10. It's still going to impact the traffic. And I am a mathematician, so I totally agree the average meets the minimum requirement for R8, but you have the discretionary choice not to go with that. I don't think we would be here today if those were all 8,000 square foot lots or bigger, that there wouldn't be an argument. But the thing that we're kind of asking for is that you keep it R10, not make it R10, but keep it R10, so then it will be an R8 neighborhood. And I'd also like to know how to file something so that you work on making the rules different for now, for the R8, R6, as Mr. Espy spoke, and say 90% of the lots have to be a minimum size of R8 or 8,000 square foot if it's R8 or 10,000 if it's R10. And I just learned today why ours are all 10,000 square foot, because the law was different back then. Again, talking about as a mathematician, when you talk about the density of the neighborhood, you have to think about those 3 lots are throwing off the density also. So you're really not comparing apples and oranges. And also when we talked about, again, the mathematics of it, when we talked about 26% were R10 in Oregon City, and 17 were R8, and 13 were R6, it would be better comparison if you talked about how many homes were R10 and how many homes were R8 and how many homes were on R6, because it throws it off with talking about the area instead of the number of homes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else before I call up the applicants? Come on up. You can fill out the slip afterwards. Yeah, I said that at the beginning.
I did, and I set it up here earlier.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
So I'm Andrew Richter.
We don't have it though.
I sent everything that unless it fell.
Your name for the record?
Andrew Richter.
Okay.
And
All right.
I can fill out another
Yeah.
one.
All right.
May it fall down. Oh, there it is. Thank you.
So I'm just going to bring up the ethics of it. Right now we are discussing whether or not we should go R10 to R8. But everything that's been proposed is R8 from the beginning. So to approve this transition means you approve of having the wool pulled over your eyes. It means that you approve of only going halfway. If I said I'd pay $100 for something and I pay 80 of it and I only intend to pay 80, would you really allow me to continue with the transaction, or do you hold me accountable to 100? Hold them accountable to the R10 that they agreed to. It's purely ethics and it's purely the mathematics. Do not use this as a simple mathematical transaction. It's starting to sound like Trump math.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nope, nope, please don't clap.
It's her son.
Yes, I know. Okay, anybody else? I'm going to call the applicants back up for their rebuttal, if they'd like.
I suspect they do like.
I think they like.
Chairman Griff, we'd like to request a recess for a few minutes, if that's all right. Before we
prepare your rebuttal.
Yeah.
It's up to the commission.
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
It's
we're going to,
anyway to
right,
hit
we're
the
going to
restroom.
recess for 5 minutes.
I'll set the timer for 5 minutes, just so everyone knows too.
Okay.
Is that time averaging? Chocolate cookies in the back?
I think it might be. I'm getting some,
I need mints.
I'm getting some
Would
water.
you like a mint?
That is a request for continuance planning file CP 170003, General Development Concept Plan Amendment, and DP 17001, Detailed Development Plan for a Safe Place Modular Building.
I move that we continue CP 17003 and CP PP 17001?
DP and CP.
DP and CP.
To a date certain of November 13th?
Yes.
I second it.
Of what date?
November 13th?
Is there a second?
I did.
Tom Guile seconded. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe?
Aye.
Commissioner Guile?
Yes, I mean, aye.
Chair McGriff?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. So the item was for Clackamas County, it's for modular for a safe place building.
Thank you for your
That will be
suggestion, Mr.
continued to
Johnson.
November 13th. The hearing will be in this room at 7 PM on that date.
There isn't anybody here for that, so, okay, so we are done with that, and we're back to top of the pops. That's all right, that's all right. We're in recess, we're in
Let's
recess.
continue everything for the next month.
I can't think of it, see, now that he's asking me about who Tom Petty is, I can't think of a song right off the top of my head. technical difficulties and we can't control computers as much as we think we can. So anyway, I will call this back into session and we'll continue where we left off. And Christina, please.
And I apologize. The email from Rick Fernandez to myself dated Wednesday, September 20th was inadvertently left out of the record. And I'd like to add that in as Exhibit 4 tonight. You've been provided it. The applicant's provided it. If anybody in the audience needs a copy, I can hand it.
Okay, may I pick up back where I was?
You can, we may.
All right, Chris.
Real quick, it is part of the record, Christina?
Yes.
Correct. It has been
No,
entered.
it is part of the record already.
It is?
Yes.
Did I miss it? So I didn't miss it.
It is under Public Comment Exhibit 2, Petition. You have it sandwiched between a couple of different items just before the petition starts.
Okay. Well, we can add it again tonight just
Yeah, that's
for
fine.
clarification.
But I just wanted you to know you did get it.
Okay. I think we're there.
Okay.
Good evening, I'm Todd Mobley with Lancaster Engineering. I'm the traffic engineer you've been hearing some about this evening. We don't have too much time for rebuttal, so I'm gonna just take a minute or two here quickly on transportation. I would say if you have questions about the rebuttal, please ask them of us after our rebuttal before the record closes. I just wanted to clarify, in our traffic impact study, we did quantify the impact. It is not zero. We do look at impacts to offsite intersections. And the performance standards we use for those allow congestion. So just because there is congestion doesn't mean it's failing or unacceptable. And the type of performance standards that the city's adopted allow things like waiting through a traffic signal to cycle multiple times to be served. So that, while that people don't prefer that operation, it does meet the performance standards and the system's designed to operate that way. I also wanted to point out, approving new development, people move to the neighborhood and they pay their transportation system development charges, which help fund the new improvements to the transportation system that are considered in the transportation system plan. So in that regard, the transportation system won't get better without new development. It's the new development that helps fund those improvements that actually improve conditions. And in this case, we did find that the performance standards were satisfied, recognizing that congestion is acceptable. The streets will be well within the anticipated traffic volumes for a local residential street. We have done, I think, most of these adjacent subdivisions. We've done a lot of work in Oregon City, throughout the city. And the results we found here were consistent with what we've done over the years, actually. And so I think I'll leave it at that for transportation.
I'm Monty Hurley with AKS Engineering. Touch on a number of things here. So starting out regarding parking, I think Ms. Wheeler, as well as Mr. Durr and Mr. Kelly all commented on parking. There might have been some others. These homes on these lots are going to be 2- and 3-car garages. They're going to have 2 or 3 parking spaces in front of the garages. They're going to have 32-foot wide local streets in front of them, allowing parking both sides. There's a substantial amount of parking on this project. And if Ms. Robertson Gardner would put up the slide that shows the densities for all of the projects there, you'll see that most of those projects have comparable densities, and those projects don't have parking problems. We're hearing about potential parking problems, and you're not seeing it in adjacent neighborhoods that are slightly different in lot sizes than Hazel Creek Farms. We heard a lot about fuzzy math, and the code criteria is right there. R8 is an 8,000 square foot lot average. The 20% is 20% less than that. Minimum lot size in R8 subdivisions is 6,400 square feet. That's what it is. That's your code. There's some discussion about automatic zoning of R10, and when residential land is annexed in, it's comp planned, LDR. LDR allows for R6, R8, and R10 zones. R10 is what the city puts on that. Yes, we're at a zone change for R8. It's within the comp plan. It's certainly not an unintended zone for this area. Setbacks. The R8 setbacks are not 5 foot, no matter what, it has nothing to do with flexible lot sizing or lot averaging. R8 setbacks are 7 foot and 9 foot for the sides. R10 setbacks for the sides are 8 foot and 10 foot. There's 1 foot difference in side yard setbacks between R8 and R10. Regarding the open space, that's public open space. We maintained by the HOA, but there's no intentions, but restrictions on that not to allow the public in there. And will be maintained. It will be a nice place. The Wheelers want to ensure that. The developer wants to ensure that, and there'll be criteria in the homeowners association documents, the CC&Rs, to require that. I'd like to say, I've been doing work out there in this area for almost 20 years. I knew Dave Wheeler Sr. It really bothers me what I've heard some of the folks and the neighbors say about him. There was a lot of reference to ethics and integrity. And the Wheeler family, nor Dave Sr., Dave Wheeler Sr., none of them have opposed other developments here. None of them opposed zone changes. They were here before any of those folks. And for them to be criticized is unbelievable to me. I worked on most of these surrounding developments that these folks live in. And Dave Sr., I knew him a long time. He didn't oppose those projects. He welcomed those projects in. And now it's time for his property development and the Wheeler family property to develop. And it's getting opposed by everyone else that came in after he did and after the Wheeler family did. And that's just unbelievable to me.
Real quick, heard a lot of different things here this evening. Primarily what we heard was, oh, Mom. Sorry. Primarily what you heard was a disagreement about some of the clear and objective criteria, the subdivision criteria, lot sizes, configuration of lots, widths of streets, parking, all those issues, which is fairly typical. What you didn't hear a bunch of was, other than Ms. Richter talking at the beginning of the hearing about, the approval criteria for a zone change. So I brought those 2 notebooks up here earlier that have all the findings that demonstrate that the criteria are met for the zone change. It was supported by your staff, and the criteria have been met. And there's a lot of evidence in the record that supports that. There's not a lot of evidence that doesn't support that. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions? No. Well, any questions? Okay, well, I actually do have one. So let me ask this from a devil's advocate point of view, Monty, and again, hopefully this is not going to bother you, but so if the lots are closer to R6, why didn't you guys just apply for R6?
Well, if you remember the history on this area,
Sure.
We looked at going to R6 on some adjacent properties, and the Planning Commission and the City Commission didn't feel R6 was appropriate. They felt R8 was appropriate, which is why you see the surrounding property zoned R8. So we could have came in here and played a game and went for R6 and tried to settle on R8. Instead, we showed you exactly what we wanted to prepare, what the Wheeler family wanted for their property.
Okay. And then I think I asked this question before, but I'll ask it again. On the lots that are adjacent to Tolstrup Drive, you have 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, and 39. And I just did a quick sketch. I know this is not part of the approval criteria, but seems to me there's been a lot of testimony about having R10 bump up to R10, and I just created 4 lots out of those so that they all match the R10 that they were abutting.
What's your question?
That's my question.
I didn't understand the question.
I didn't hear it.
I said, basically, I took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lots and made them 4 lots so that they would abut the R10 that's adjacent to the R10. And we asked, somebody asked it the last time, had you considered doing that to make them more compatible? At least on that end.
So your question is, had we considered it? And the answer is no. And the reason is as we've been developing, working on developments a long time, and we don't see a large difference between a 7,900 square foot lot and a 10,000 square foot lot. And we've heard a lot of people say that there's a huge difference, but I know a lot of good people that live on a lot smaller than that take care of their lots and they look nice. And I don't see that those lots devalue the R10 lots or any other reason. So that's why we didn't do that.
I wasn't
We didn't
suggesting
consider
that they were devaluing or anything of that sort. I mean, you're not going to be building the houses. You know, what generally happens is you have a smaller lot and they build a house that practically fills the whole thing. So most of these have, you know, what is called, at least in some of the circles, is that snout houses, which garage faces the street and you whip your garage door, you know, so you've got all that sort of garage issue. Okay, just, again, it was brought up a couple of times and I said, well, yeah, that might go a long way to make this a little more.
One thing with respect to
palatable.
the snout houses, if I can,
Yeah.
is that the R8 allows you to go a little bit closer with the front of your house, so you
Sure.
would have the opposite of a
Sure.
snout house.
Yeah.
If at R20, it would be required, or excuse me, R10, it would be either flush or a snout house.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I guess that was the concern that I had with some of the lots. They're about 32 foot wide at the front, and they don't only widen a little bit as you go down them. And if you have a 7 and a 9 foot setback, and you've got, a 32 foot wide lot, you've got a 16 foot wide house for a fair distance down that. So you're looking at, railroad cars, and I'm talking about.
Skinny houses?
Yeah, I'm talking about some of the ones that are along that cul-de-sac on the top.
yeah, there's, if you're talking about not the cul-de-sac, maybe you're thinking about the eyebrow for.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so some of those houses will be pushed further back. It's just a geometry issue to be able to.
Can you tell me a little bit about the modifications that you guys are requesting?
Sure.
Yeah, you got modification 1 under 12-04007.
Right, so
Yeah, I can switch.
that's the second one. I'm not sure which one there was
So
two.
you're looking at a pedestrian access way has to be provided every 330 feet if a block exceeds a maximum of 530 feet. The island block created by extending Skellinger Way at Tulstrup Drive through the project between Hazel Creek Drive and Planning Extension of Orchard Grove Drive exceeds the maximum block length, standard of 530 feet, plus or minus 26 feet, 556 feet. So you guys have to do that because.
Well, something we have to do. It's something we discussed. We had a pre-application conference with city engineering staff, city planning staff, variety of other service providers, and it was recognized that this block length was a little bit long, but is it appropriate to put another street through there or a pedestrian access way? And we looked at sort of out of direction travel, and it really didn't solve that. It's not that long of a block, so it was slightly over, so we didn't think that another street there really helped anything.
Okay.
And to add to that, I guess the street geometry was kind of dictated by Orchard Grove Drive. Moving that further to the north, those lots, it's already over 110 feet from the urban growth boundary line, so that Orchard Grove Drive location is somewhat fixed due to the street stub location, urban growth boundary. And Hazel Creek Farm Drive to the north was also set by the Hazel Creek Farm subdivision, so that slight additional length just didn't seem to warrant another street.
Okay, and then there was a mid-block, you guys did not want to have a mid-block pedestrian connection through the blocks exceeding the maximum spacing of 530 feet? How come you guys couldn't do that?
Not saying we couldn't, we just didn't think it did not provide a much shorter out of direction travel for pedestrians. It was slightly shorter, so.
Yeah, because I know that, especially with the subdivisions with the blocks this long, it's a real pain to have to walk all the way down a block if you want to walk, transverse a subdivision, and you can't because there's, just a big
Can't go that way.
block of houses or whatever. So, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that, you know, if we're gonna ask for, you know, a reduced or, you know, a reduction in the zoning and all that other kind of stuff, I would like to see other types of amenities that, like pedestrian circulation and other kinds of things that, you know, people benefit from that, you know, to, as sort of maybe a quid pro quo, I don't wanna use those words, but as, you know, in exchange for, you know, a reduction in lot size and a reduction in, and an increase in number of lots and the changing in zones. So I guess what bothers me a little bit is I'm looking at all these modifications in addition to the zone change. So I don't know how to, I'm trying to reconcile that a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I guess if you want, there's not a lot of modifications, there's two, and if, I don't know if you want to speak to, did you want to talk about the other one too?
I guess jumping back,
Okay.
if that's a major issue in the commissions, you could condition a PED connection through
I think
there.
that's, I mean, that's,
So,
Do you want one there?
Well,
I mean, I think it should be one.
I think there should be one there either way. I mean, I don't care what zoning it is, that there should be pedestrian connections there. But I'm just, cul-de-sac has been defined 5 with 5 setbacks, planter strips. Okay, yeah.
Go back, sorry.
Just,
I'm trying to guess what slide makes, sorry.
I'm sorry?
I'm just trying to follow you with a slide that makes sense, I apologize.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's all I've got.
Okay. Any other questions?
What was the other modification? There's the pedestrian and the, what was the other modification?
The separation of roadways or the roadway length?
Length, roadway
Yeah.
length.
it was the cul-de-sac was the second one.
Oh, the cul-de-sac.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bob, please.
What assurance does the city have on the width of these lots that it's going to enable adequate off-street parking, which if those streets are cluttered, is going to affect public safety? Kids darting out of between cars that are parked on the street, speed lanes, things of that nature. I know it's kind of it's not vague because we're dealing with public safety here, which has to do with traffic, which is related to on-street parking. You follow me?
If you're asking, is there an assurance there be off-street parking
No,
for each lot?
I'm not asking for an assurance because I know you can't give it. But what I'm asking for is the design of the lot in terms of width and setback from the street. Is it going to be adequate to provide off-street parking? So, and if it's not, then the alternative is for on-street parking. And on-street parking is going to affect public safety.
Okay, well, I'd suggest, of course, there is adequate area, going to be adequate area for
Well,
off-street parking.
You mentioned three-car garages.
There could be, 2 and 3 car garages, sure.
On a narrow lot?
60-foot wide, yes.
And those houses will be designed for that?
The houses, I mean, we're getting a little bit forward here. There's no house that's been designed
Yeah,
at this
I
point.
understand
but
that, I understand, but if you project the argument that you're setting forth here on lot size, lot width, lot depth, that all is going to affect whether or not cars can be parked on site. And it's our responsibility to address public safety, at least it's mine. And if we can't be assured that there's adequate off-street parking, then those cars got to go somewhere, and they're going to be on-street. And once they're on-street, and they're up and down that street, it's going to affect public safety because sight distance clearance, things of that nature. I haven't heard an adequate explanation applied to that.
the homes are gonna be built such that they're gonna have 2 and 3 car garages. 2 and 3 car garages are gonna have parking spaces in front of the homes, or in front of the garages, and then the parking spaces in the garages. Streets are designed to 32 foot. That's a local street width that allows for parking on both sides. If you don't like that criteria, it's probably the same as the lot average criteria, then the planning commission or city commission ought to change it. But I don't think that's for review in this subdivision. But Todd will probably address your safety question better than I did.
I just want to talk a little about the on-street parking. If people do use the on-street parking, it's our experience in subdivisions kind of this density with streets of this size, there's some cars parked on the street, but it's not full. And even if it were full, the city restricts parking in areas where it would block sight distance or otherwise impact public safety. So even if the street were to fill completely, everybody in the block's having a graduation party in June or something, the street could still function safely. That's part of the engineering review and plan review that goes through the city to get the streets built. So I wouldn't assume that if there's a lot of on-street parking, it equates to an unsafe situation.
Well, I just, as an example, I live on a 60-foot right, my property's on a 60-foot right-of-way, and there's generally parking on both sides of the street at all times. You have to be very careful opening your car door on the 60-foot right-of-way.
Yeah, I understand. I live in a lot that's just barely under 6,000.
But I don't live on a 54-foot street. So anyway, I get where your point's going with that.
Yeah, and I do too. I don't mean to discount your point. I just want to make sure it's understood that if there's parking that would jeopardize safety, that's restricted by the city during the plan review phase. So the available curb frontages that are there for parking, you could do so safely, even if it were full.
I'd also like to say right-of-way widths and paved widths for parking are different. So a 60-foot right-of-way and a 54-foot right-of-way, that has nothing to do with your actual paved width of your street.
Well, I know, I've only got 20 feet of pavement in my street and no sidewalks, so.
And you may have a 60-foot right-of-way.
Yeah, well, mine's curb to curb, so anyway, no, I want you to know, I appreciate what you said, Todd, about that everything meets the performance standards, and I think as a person who's been in this game a long time, or the whole process, SDCs don't pay for everything. They just pay for a smidgen, and you have to wait a really long time for the fund to get up there. Mike would know, Mike Mitchell, who's gone now, about park SDCs. Takes a while for that to build up. And I think kind of what you heard people saying is that while our plan does say congestion is acceptable, I would have to, I'd say if I stood out in front of Fred Meyer and asked, every other person, they'd probably say, no, it's not acceptable. Because of course, everybody wants to get to wherever they're going and everybody else needs to get out of their way. So it's depending on what's acceptable
at the moment.
At the moment. So.
Sure, I'm just trying to provide.
No, I know what you're saying.
The separation between public opinion and clear and objective standards.
There's public opinion and there's public perception. And like I said, my esteemed colleague, John Replinger, knows that as long as I have been here, I have made comments about transportation. It's just a pet peeve of mine. It's just, it just doesn't do everything that I think it needs to do. And I was a part of the TSP and kept asking for additional standards to be put in. So we looked at off-site impacts because traffic in any place in Oregon City affects every other place in Oregon City. It's not isolated. And so it's kind of, when we do these.
Excuse me, Chair McGriff.
We have another item on the agenda tonight, and so we'd like to move along.
I'm wrapping it up. Thank you very much for your comment. I'm going to be finished in just a second.
I just wanted to say that we do have our city transportation engineer who can answer some of these questions regarding traffic if you have a concern.
I understand. Thank you. So thank you very much for your comments. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, are we ready to close the public hearing? Okay, we're closing the public hearing. What's your pleasure?
One end to the other?
Or we can start in the middle, whatever you like.
I'll start.
You're always starting something.
We've had a lot of testimony tonight about the word integrity. And we've had a lot of emotion expressed. And I think the one thing that we've got to address is the fact that I don't think anybody's comfortable with this lot averaging. I know I'm not. But it's in the code, and the applicant has made an effort, I think, to address these issues. I'm going to respond to the integrity of the code because I think that in the long run, that's all we have to rely on. Because if we don't, then let's take this out to the parking lot. We'll finish it there. So let's rely on the code, and I'm going to reluctantly support this for the sake of the city and its standards, but I'm not satisfied with our standards. I understand the testimony from the residents, and I side with them in that regard, but I still think that our code is paramount in our decision-making process. So with that, I'll pass it on to the next.
Okay. Well, I pretty much agree with most of what Bob has just said. And the code, yeah, we are frozen with the code that was in effect when this application came forward. And it's processed its way through the system, and here it is today in front of the Planning Commission. Lots of suggestions from neighbors and different people as to what they would like and what they thought it would be and all that. If we're going to allow that, we have to go back and change the code before we can make a decision on it. And that's not fair to the applicant, where all the other applications in this same general area of Oregon City has been annexed as a R10, which is a holding place, and have to date successfully changed the zone to R8 on each and every one of them. So with that as a background, I would support this position, or support this application.
Okay, well, I understand that TSP allows for additional traffic to go into intersections that are already close or at failure. And I understand that development needs to occur and people have their prescriptive rights to build on the property that the zoning designation is specified for. However, I don't think that that gives us the impetus or the excuse or the ability to approve a zone change that will send more traffic to that intersection. So I heard a lot of different numbers about how many more units they're going to send, how many more trips they're going to be sent to that intersection, but in my mind, I don't think that that makes any sense for us to approve a zone change when I don't really see in my mind that when we look at traffic, and there might be some other things in there in terms of public facilities are adequate to serve the site or support the zone change. I don't like conditional zone changes. I'm looking at a sewer condition here, and I know that those are usually attached to subdivision requirements where we're looking at that they need to put in a pump station, but we don't really know how big the pump station needs to be or what the capacity is or any of that kind of stuff, and I need to see that. I need to see a little bit more information about those kinds of things as well when I'm looking at a zone change approval, so I will likely not support this evening. That's all I've got.
Tom?
What Paul said. I've been intently, that's why I asked a lot of questions when I came in here. I'm really interested, and I was also listening to the 77 lots versus 74 lots. 3 homes makes a difference. But I also know it makes a difference. I live on a 10,000 square foot lot, but I know it makes a difference. A few thousand feet, a couple hundred feet. I just don't like the idea of putting so many little homes, and I understand the neighbors in there. I know what the code says, but 3 homes between R8 and R10, and almost all of them are going to be R6. I find that I can't support it, a zone change.
Done?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, first, the one thing I was glad to hear is nobody objected to the fact that they're building there. Some of these subdivisions, no, don't build in my, and it's like, no, okay. Everybody understands that there will be houses there no matter what the zoning is. Thank you. I guess the thing I'm hanging my hat on about this, first off, generally I don't have a problem with the R8s. I don't really have a problem with the modification they want for the cul-de-sac. I mean, with PG slamming lines right through the middle of the place, you gotta kind of be a little creative. What I do have a problem with is how the R8 and the R10s are abutting each other. And on 2 different sides, this proposed zone change is R10. And it just seems to me that just as what happened with Ed's Orchard, where part of it was R8 and part of it was R10, that Skellinger Way is a natural divide between the neighborhoods and the livability of the neighborhoods. There's a few lost lots, but you know, how this pencils out economically is irrelevant to what we're doing. If they want to build a McMansion, they can do that. It just, in driving around the neighborhoods and driving around what little bit of Ed's Orchard I could and looking at how the lots were laid out, how you interact with your neighbors, front, back, across the street, is a direct livability issue. And since Carrie always wants a criteria or whatever, I'd go to 17.68.020A, which says, references the proposal shall meet the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, and goal 2.4 of the comprehensive plan, which says you have to be concerned about neighborhood livability, which is an interpretation that is discretionary, I guess. It can be looked at in a couple of different ways. And so that's my thought about this. I do kind of agree that the longer no. The longer, for the first modification, the longer block, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, the longer block, yeah, street width.
Is, it's only less than half of a lot, no matter which R you have it at. Longer than is necessary for, or that kicks in the requirement. So I don't think that's necessarily a big thing, but if it were R8, there's that many more people trying to get around the block, so having a cross connection might be better. Let's see, boy, it's hard to write down notes. Really it comes down to that area about the livability and the connectivity between the neighborhoods. Everything on the south side of Skellinger Way is R8, and that's an R8 neighborhood, and people are already building there. Everything on the north side of Skellinger is almost completely R10, except for a small amount of R8s in the Ed's Orchard, but even Ed's Orchard has a budding R10. So based on that livability, I can't support the zone change. And then the comment that Paul made about the downstreamedness, I'm even a little concerned about building at R10 if we've got intersections, and I know that 5-way is a bit of a problem. We put moratoriums on building because we couldn't handle the flow of sewer. So, why, are we at the point? Well, we're not. But we're fast approaching the point where we might need to do a moratorium on building until we do the roundabouts and the, I don't know how else we can get down off the hill. The hill is what it is. I don't
Flying
think
cars.
zip lines down to park and rides. There we go. So anyway, it's those two concerns about the increased pressure on the intersection and the connectivity of the livability that do not incline me to approve the zone change.
Wish I'd said that.
Well,
you can say ditto.
All the things you said.
Okay, well, I will say just in closing that I agree with what you said, Bob. I fundamentally agree with what you said, Vern. I did have a concern as well about the condition that puts something off to the future, because we've had many problems with storm drainage and sewer that we said, oh, we're going to fix it later. But that's come back to bite us in the butt. One of my concerns, as you know, obviously is traffic. But I kind of have to look at the adequacy of public facilities and services. And regardless of what our colleagues at the school district say, they're crunched. I know that they're going to be asking for a bond here. I've been hearing about it from people I know that work at the school district. I know it's coming. The schools that we have currently are not adequate. We've got growth going on, and we don't have adequate facilities currently. I also continue to have a concern about adequate police services because I know how stretched they are. I think we can pretty well handle it with fire. Not concerned as much about that. But again, I think your concern about the livability, I do appreciate the fact that the other developments transition from one to the other, and so it makes, it's to me, it's an easy fix. I think it could be done. So that's kind of where I am on that. So do we have a motion?
I move that we deny the proposed zone change, and file numbers are.
You want, the zone
TP
change is.
1703.
The zone change, ZC 1702.
A second.
There's been a second. So Carrie, I have a quick question for you, and I should have asked it earlier when we're not in deliberation, but it was mentioned earlier that the applicants had put together both of these, and I kept thinking, isn't there some sort of a risk by joining them if one doesn't get approved and the other, the way this is done is one can't stand without the other. But there is some slight risk, I presume.
Well, you know, I mean, there is risk, but they were, I mean, there's also a benefit too, because
Yes.
they don't have to go to LUBA twice.
Right.
I mean, so there's a benefit to consolidated review
Right.
as well.
Right, okay.
So
Perfect.
they
Okay.
requested it, though,
Yes, they
didn't they?
requested it, yes, okay.
So do we
The
need,
city
so we have a motion-
required
yeah, so
the
you make-
applications be married together.
Yeah, you answered the
If you
question,
turn them in
Carrie.
at the same time.
Okay, so we
Otherwise,
have-
you'd wait till a notice of decision for one.
So we have
to
a
allow the other.
motion
well,
and a second?
just a second, a clarification. His motion was just about the zone change, ZC 1702. Do we need to add TP 1703, or do
No,
we
the
need to do a
subdivision
second?
should go forward.
They can't.
The subdivision can't go forward, it doesn't meet the R10 zoning.
So then they would need to come back and.
But before you make a motion, I'd like to talk a little bit about
They've already done
procedure.
There's a motion and a second, we're in discussion.
Okay, excuse me. The 120-day expires right now on November 7th, and it's looking to me like this is going to be and the motion on the table is a motion to deny the zone change in the subdivision. We don't have findings for a recommendation for a zone change denial. And in order to draft some and get them to you in time for the city commission to have an opportunity to consider, the city commission has to have 2 meetings because they have to adopt an ordinance by 2 readings.
Right.
So we need to get this on the agenda for the city commission meeting 1 week from this Wednesday, so the 18th. If it is amenable to you, I propose that we scramble, get some findings, and you allow Denise to sign off on them outside of a public meeting, and they'll reflect what your discussion was with regard to traffic, with regard to public facility adequacy, neighborhood livability, and comprehensive plan policy 2.4, and
Goal 2.4.
and school capacity. So that's the only way we can make it by November 7th. We can't come back before you for another meeting. We just don't have time.
If that's okay with you guys,
So we
it's
don't
okay
get
with
to
us.
vote?
Or me.
Yeah, we do get to
we're
vote. She's suggesting that the motion be amended.
I'm suggesting that the motion be amended to instruct staff to draft findings consistent with your recommendation, and then instructing Denise to.
And empowering Denise as
Empowering
president
Denise
to approve the findings.
to approve them, just because we don't have time.
Okay, so we'll move to direct staff to draft the findings and for the chair's signature at a.
Whenever they call me.
At a date of staff's choosing.
It's gonna be in the next 48 hours.
All right.
Okay, so let me, wait, before you, go ahead.
A question I had. The motion is to deny the zone change only? Is
And
that-
the
is that
subdivision.
correct?
Subdivision.
And so
So you
you're
need to
packaging
amend
it? Okay, that's what I was.
So you're talking about, so
Both the,
40
both the
48 hours
subdivision
would be,
and-
Before Wednesday.
We'll be talking to you tomorrow. The agenda goes out. The agenda goes out on
okay, so
Wednesday.
you may have to amend the motion to have Paul sign them because I'm leaving to go out of town tomorrow, midday. I will be back Thursday.
Is Commissioner Espy
Unless-
available?
Unless you
He
ask,
is.
unless you
I'm
send
available.
it to me,
Yep.
I can give you the
Let's
fax
have,
and the phone number.
let's have Commissioner Espy
So,
do it.
is it okay with you guys if he signs it?
Yes.
Does anybody else have to review the findings?
Well, we're empowering him to be the reviewer.
I know, but I
Oh,
mean,
do we get a look at those findings?
Normally we would.
An email of them or whatever, or?
We could send you a copy of the city commission packet or the agenda that'll have it attached, and then it'll go, we'll do this again before the city commission with that closed record. But, so we'll send it to you, so if there's something awry, you can see and tell us before the meeting.
So we get back to you with any things that we want to make question it, let's say.
We'll give you the final copy as determined by Commissioner Espy as the vice chair of Planning Commission. And then if there's some concern, then you can let us know. And then we'll discuss that at the city commission agenda, or city commission on October 18th.
Is that all right?
Okay, so
Yeah, if you
just,
said 72, I'd be back, but
so just for the record, the motion is to deny TP 1703, ZC 1702, to direct staff to compile the findings and empowering Vice Chair Espy to approve the findings for forwarding to City Council.
correct.
Thanks, Commissioner Meady.
And then
There's
do
a
you
lot of-
approve, do you approve the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. All right, are we ready to vote? Okay, call for the question.
All right. Commissioner Guile.
Do you say aye, you're denying their application?
Aye.
Aye, you're supporting the motion.
Supporting the motion,
to
yes.
deny
To
the
deny.
application.
There we go, okay. Commissioner Meady?
Aye.
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney?
no.
Commissioner Johnson?
No.
Chair McGriff?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-2.
Thank you very much for your time, and we're going to go on to our next agenda item.
So clear the room fast.
And to be clear, the record is closed.
Yes.
Yes, so just, folks, before you head out the door, so
The
that
commission's gonna,
the record's closed, so that means you can't submit any new testimony. If you go to the city commission,
And
the city commission's gonna hold a hearing on October 18th to consider this. You are welcome to come in and submit testimony, but no new evidence will be permitted.
would somebody push the door closed? So if you want to stand out in the lobby and chat, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What's she doing out there?
Lois? She's just gonna go talk to people.
No, she's right, you mean it's right there.
Oh,
Yeah,
because
just a moment.
She's presenting.
I know.
Yeah, you can be really mean to her now if you really want to.
You still have to be nice
Sir.
to me.
Quiet tonight, just said it.
I believe in striking when the iron's
I
hot.
just said briefly what I
Before we
think.
move on to the next agenda item.
I did. I was going
For the record,
Hang on, guys. Bob's talking.
what happened here tonight is a good example why our comprehensive plan needs an update and review. We do not have the tools available to us to address these things adequately. Enough said.
Okay, that will be in the, I hope that will
That's
be in
for
the
the
minutes.
record.
Yes,
That's
that's
for
for
the
the record, and I hope that will be in the minutes.
Okay. Just a second, sorry.
Boy, it's just not your night for
It is
technology,
not
is
my
it?
night for technology.
Look, I have no qualms about it. I mean, it is what it is, so believe me, we are not upset about it. We can't control it.
I truly believe they're sentient beings. That's been my
I know.
understanding.
It's whatever,
They
the
know.
computer gods are not
They
with us
know.
tonight.
I was military, I
Okay.
understand gremlins.
I think they moved over from the library.
Chair McGriff,
Yes.
since there's nobody in the audience, and I believe that all of the
I wasn't planning
people
on
are
reading
here.
it anyway.
I don't think you need to read the 197-762 disclosures, but you do need to poll
Yes, I
the
will.
commission.
Yes, I was
Thank
going
you.
to ask them if I could dispense with reading it, and I would just get to the point to ask if there have been any site visits, ex parte contacts, or anything you would like to declare. So let me open the public hearing for this item. We're going to open the public hearing for PZ 1701, ZC 1704, SP 17114. And may I ask, gentlemen, if you've visited the site, have any ex parte contacts, or anything that you would like to declare? Tom,
Nothing? Oh,
did you visit the site?
Don't even know where it is. No, I know where it is, but no, I have not visited the site.
Visit the site, drive by it on a regular basis, and actually used to work in the building.
I ride by the site on my bike just about every other day.
I drive by the site almost any day I go any direction.
That too, yeah.
But did you visit the site?
No, I did not visit the site.
Are you familiar with the site?
I was to National Night Out near the site.
Near there, okay.
Yeah, I've been at that.
I go by the site on a daily basis, cussing and swearing that intersection every chance I get.
Okay, that is noted for the record. And I guess I am the lone person. I actually visited the site. I got out of my car. I walked around the site. I'm very familiar with it. I know that the Montessori school is currently there. I had been to the building many times when it was the Educational Service District. I'm very familiar with the building and the lot. I have not had any ex parte contact with anybody regarding it, other than, I think I asked Laura the why question, which I'll get to later. So that was an ex parte contact.
All right, well, I did present this 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to just go quickly through just to, and Commissioner Espy was not there. So this, again, is a consolidated application with a comprehensive plan amendment, a zone change, and a minor site plan to the existing annex building. Let's see. So Mount Pleasant Annex is at 698 Warner Parrott Road, and Mount Pleasant School is at 1232 Lynn Avenue. So the area with the star is the subject building on the property that we are really looking through the site plan design review, but the zone change and comprehensive plan map amendment involve the whole site. So once again, approving a comprehensive plan amendment, a zone change, and a minor site plan and design review. Normally, the minor site plan and design review, like the subdivision, would be a type 2 process, but it's coupled with this type 4 process. There is a comprehensive plan amendment from medium density residential to quasi-public, and R10, R3.5 to institutional. I'm going to bring up John Replinger to come to the dais to explain the trip cap that's been put on this, because the zone change is for the whole site, and this is just a tiny piece of the puzzle. The staff has recommended that, for the most part, as part of this zone change, there is a trip cap that looks at the transportation impact of the existing school and annex, and does not allow any new uses that exceed that being either through business licenses or development applications, unless it comes back to the Planning Commission with a remedy. So any new development applications will need to meet this trip cap or come back to you.
So before he starts, let me ask my procedural question. So if this is for the entire site, why is the application not being submitted by the Community Development Department and the Police Department? Since we know that that is I know that that is the future use of the site. Why is this not a joint application?
I'm going to let the applicant speak to that. This is my rule of staff. The owner is the City of Oregon City, and that is what is the applicant on my end.
Okay.
So the
I'll let
planning office acts as the applicant's agent, I guess.
You're acting as the applicants.
As planning staff here, we looked at the owner, which is the City of Oregon City. And at that point, we received signatures for that application. So I'll let the applicant give the background of the existing and the potential upcoming development application at Mount Pleasant School.
So, Chair McGriff, Commissioners, as Christina explained, it's a multi-part application, and one of the key factors has to do with the zone change. Now, normally, we require the applicant to address the maximum permitted use under the proposed zoning, compare that with what's allowed under the allowable zoning. We have on numerous occasions within the city allowed a trip cap to be used, and in this case, we're establishing the applicant has proposed, city staff recommends the imposition of a trip cap that corresponds with the prior use of the site, meaning the elementary school, which had 46,000 square feet and produced, on calculation, 238 AM peak hour trips and 143 PM peak hour trips. By using that as a trip cap, we feel that we are abiding by the no impact from the zone change. Each change of use that comes forward on this 8.5 acre site will have to compare the existing uses or the proposed uses on the site with that trip cap. Currently, we have the Montessori school, which is operating at a fairly low level. We have the essentially vacant annex building operating at a very low level. When the first development comes through, which is a city office to occupy the annex, we add that to the use of the Montessori school. We come up with a calculation that shows they are beneath the proposed trip cap. If the Montessori school goes away and the police department comes on board to occupy a portion of the site, or some other use comes forward, once again, when that comes forward, we will compare it with the trip cap. As long as it stays below the trip cap, we are not facing an issue where we need to do further analysis of the transportation planning rule, which is the effect of a zone change. If the proposed use exceeds that, additional analysis will be needed. So that's the way we're dealing with the zone change. The applicant has also had a traffic analysis letter prepared for the use of the annex building as an office site. They've prepared that traffic analysis letter that addresses things like the safety at the access points, trip generation, and all of that material is included in the traffic analysis letter. There are a number of minor issues that the applicant's traffic engineer came up with. I have provided some recommendations for the implementation of certain conditions with regard to the development of the annex. So that's the overview on how we're dealing with the zone change and the site plan review, and find that the application meets the applicant's traffic analysis letter meets the city standards with regard to the analysis, and allows us to adequately judge the impact of the land use proposal.
Did you go out and observe the site in its current configuration?
I've been out there on numerous occasions, and I have not been there at the end of the school day to observe the Montessori, but I've seen it operate at various times over the years.
Yeah, it would have been interesting for you to observe the school when it was still operating.
I did.
Be a little interesting.
I did observe it, say 5 or 8 years ago, in part in connection with some request by the Public Works staff to observe operations at Warner, Parrott, Lincoln, Lynn.
Yeah.
That intersection.
I would say, I guess one of my questions is, you're recommending that there's a one-way in and a one-way out. I see on the Lynn Avenue, I don't see a lot of problem with people making a right-hand turn. I do, however, see a problem with people trying to make a left-hand turn out of there.
Agreed.
And, again, same thing, when I was at the site, I needed to, it was at a very low peak time. There was no peak at all. So I
Sorry, I'm
came
trying to
out
find
of the other because I didn't go out you
No.
couldn't go out that way, so I came out the driveway on Warner
Sorry, I'm
Parrot,
trying to find that.
and I needed to make a left-hand turn, and I realized before I made the turn, I thought, oh, I've got that curve coming around there. Luckily, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning, there's not a lot of traffic, so I was able to safely cross, but I wouldn't do that during any peak time.
One of the reasons that I recommended in the conditions of approval that some of these things be dealt with, like the driveway width on Warner Parrot be dealt with at a later date, is because the expectation that there will be a roundabout. So there will be a change in the configuration. There may be a requirement imposed by the city in connection with a future development to move the site access to better meet the requirements, the design requirements associated with the roundabout, or some other improvement with regard to that operations of that intersection.
Well, I hope I see that in my lifetime.
I think all of
You've
us
seen 3
agree.
roundabouts appear in this city in your lifetime. That's more than I expected to ever see.
Yeah, but they weren't there.
So just as a quick summary of the whole trip cap thing, and I'm just doing this to be mean, things get really busy with building permits and everything. That means that the police department can't park their cars here anymore, right? Because they'll be over the trip cap and they'll just have to not use their building because we're developing so much.
That's rather unlikely.
I know. By then they'll come back for trip changes and everything.
Well,
anyway.
if there need to, I mean, there's the opportunity for the applicant to provide us with some actual data on the operations of driveways. There's, and if the traffic generated by city offices built on the site ends up being really high, and the police department comes back with a grander building and more activity, they would simply need to have a traffic engineer prepare additional analysis that included showing how they would comply with the transportation planning rule.
I guess my real question is, when you're comparing your trip cap and you say the school, you're referring to when it was Mount Pleasant in a
When it was
function-
Mount Pleasant
Okay.
Elementary School.
When they had-
46,000 square foot elementary school.
When they had 27 buses and 150 parents driving in and out of it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, if they ever hit that much business, we're Portland.
So was the information regarding transportation taking into effect the use that's directly to the west? Because that gets pretty busy. They have a lot of activities during the week, not the Saturday and Sunday. I mean, it's pretty chaotic over there on the weekends, but during the week, they still have a lot of activities at the church. They got buses, they got vans, they got all kinds of stuff going on.
Well, when we have a traffic analysis letter, we don't actually require any traffic operations analysis for the small developments. Now, whether the church, I don't recall whether the church ever had to have a traffic study.
They've been there since Moses was a pup.
Okay. So that's probably something that predated our requirements in the city for traffic operations analysis.
Well, again, it's, like I said, it's death by 1,000 cuts.
It is.
Are we tracking all the trip caps? I think we've got one other
We
one.
only have one, as far as I'm aware of.
Okay.
The bus barn, former bus barn
Right,
property.
okay. So,
The city of Oregon City has been relatively slow to adopt trip caps.
yeah.
But I have complete confidence that Oregon City can do it based on, the fact that many cities are opting for trip caps.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's weird that this is zoned R10.
No, I don't think
with
it's
the use
weird.
that it's there. It's usually,
I don't think that's weird.
usually there's a public functions type designation for schools and other kinds of.
Schools have always been
Other kinds of
conditional
things.
uses
Here,
in
yeah.
any zone,
But-
pretty much any zone except for industrial. Well, no, even industrial, you can have a school.
Yeah.
That's all my traffic questions.
Can I back up
Sure.
with almost to your start? I think you said the trip cap was for the entire project, the police station
Yes.
and the annex.
Entire site, not the project,
But-
the entire site.
But the transportation study is only on the annex, is that correct?
Essentially, that's correct. Because the trip cap is for the entire 8.5 acre site.
The whole property that
The
Oregon
whole
City's
property,
owning for the future police? and-
including the athletic fields.
Right, okay, yep.
I mean, that's what got us into the issue that if all of the athletic fields were being developed, that could really push the total amount of traffic.
Potential is there. yeah.
Potentially, and analyzing the most intense development for an 8.5 acre site would completely blow the analysis, the operations analysis for a major part of the city.
Right, and that's I believe that's correct and true, the way I perceived it. And so the trip cap isn't very much of an issue for this meeting that we're having here tonight, because the only thing that we're talking about is the annex.
That's correct.
So we don't want to get tied up in knots over the trip cap for this annex building, because that doesn't look like we would exceed the trip cap for this one building.
You will not exceed the trip cap. We've already done the calculation that the existing Montessori school plus city offices in the annex is below the trip cap. Each time a development comes forward on this 8.5 acre site, the applicant will have to go back and compare. And the minute they show that they'll exceed the trip cap, there will be a further analysis required. It does not absolutely preclude further development. It precludes further development unless they come back and prove that it has acceptable implications and mitigation.
And the mechanism for that is a CUP, conditional use permit, or?
Well, each time a building permit even comes forward, it'll be tracked in multiple ways, either in terms of a land use action or a building permit.
I have a traffic question, so I guess I have an applicant question.
Okay, well,
Okay,
hold on,
I'm here for the duration if it comes back up.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just finish through this pretty quickly, just to get us all in order. This shows the minor site plan, for the most part, is just a new skin of the exterior, and then the two entrances are in a sense, there was very under-designing of the entrances of the previous design, so this, through the minor site plan, really emphasizes both the, parking lot elevation and then the elevation that faces the school.
Please tell me it's not going to be black.
It is, it's dark gray.
I really, again, I submit to you, we're gray, gray, gray. Why do we want to have a gray building?
And I guess
Our whole thing is gray. I'm disappointed with that.
It's neutral.
But, no, it isn't.
And unfortunately, I have to give the same staff answer, which is, it's not a criteria for our approval.
I don't care.
I'm a citizen, it's my building, damn it, I don't want it to be gray.
The other piece is some revisions to parking stalls, 2 removed and 4 new parking stalls added. As we've reconfigured that elevation that faces, there we go. That faces the parking lot. Landscaping will be added in the parking lot area that's just related to the annex, as explained, because of the larger application that would come in for the school and also the roundabout. The project area is just around the parking lot related to the annex.
Thanks for the thumbnails, that's really helpful.
Okay.
Look at all those cheerful colors.
I know. So this is existing. And So the top one is kind of what you'd see as the front as it faces Warner Parrott. And then the rear, which is also an entrance as well, that faces the school. This is the new layout. There's new windows. This is opening up some additional lighting. And once again, emphasizing entrance. This shows the side elevations. And then here's the interior layout. This is kind of a center corridor, front counter, staff area. This is our existing bathrooms, and then these are conference areas, and then this is the existing some gym area that's not part of the new community development offices.
Can I ask where the front door is on that one?
Sure. This is the most people will enter here, but there is also an ability to enter through this entrance too.
So they walk by all these other people's desks to go to the reception?
No, actually, this
Oh, those are
area.
bathrooms, you're right, I see
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
I see the.
So you walk through. You can either walk through this way, either north or south, and head to the entrance counter. These are doors here that go back into the staff.
And just real quick, where's the school?
The school is
Okay.
this way.
Got it.
And this is down to Warner Parrott. And then Lynn Avenue is right here.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So these are the criteria for the zone changes we saw in the last application. And for people, even though it's not applicable, some people like to get understanding of the interior. So I will show these context photos, though they're not part of my site plan design review criteria. This is the existing entrance hallway, that main corridor. This is the 2 existing classrooms. There's classroom 1, classroom 2. There's the gym. And I will go back to the zone change criteria. So at the same issue as last time, staff believes that the applicant has met the comprehensive plan criteria, A through D, and has provided findings in the staff report that staff has concurred. And so at this point, I'm available for questions, and I know the applicant is available to make any comments. And I don't know if Assistant City Attorney Carrie Victor wanted to say anything. Okay.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
I have,
Go ahead, just jump
I
right
guess,
in.
applicant questions, so Laura.
Jump right in.
Okay, first, can we get did you have a map of the site, the before and after zoning?
Oh, yeah, at the very beginning? Yeah.
There we go. What's happening with the little brown piece?
Good evening, Laura Terway with City, in Oregon City. So this is an interesting site, right? We were kind of talking about the zoning and the comprehensive plan designation. So a majority of the site has a comprehensive plan designation of quasi-public, but the zoning is still a majority R10. So that little brown piece retains an existing comprehensive plan designation of medium density residential, and then the associated zoning with that is R3.5. Are you asking why that piece exists?
Yes, because there's no way anybody's building apartments in your parking lot.
So it's city-owned property. Yeah, the piece is a little odd. It was, when we created the intersection there, it was sort of a remnant of where the road used to go through.
Mhm.
You could imagine
I
Warner
remember where the
Parrott
road
going
used to go.
straight to hit Lynn, yeah. So that's how that got created.
So why isn't it just being absorbed into your QP and going away?
It is. That's what we're proposing.
But
We're
it says that
proposing,
you're proposing it's gonna turn into MR.
no, that's the existing. So those are the existing zoning designations and the existing comprehensive plan. We want to change the top, the whole thing from MR to QP, which is a public, quasi-public designation, which is why it is applied to the school.
That's not what that picture says. That picture says you're gonna have QP and MR inside your picture, inside your 8.5 acres.
That's the existing comprehensive plan designation.
That would be the other one that says it's R10.
That's the existing zoning designation. So one is comp plan, one zoning. That's what it is right
These are
now.
existing maps.
What we're proposing, thank you for that question, that was good. The existing comprehensive plan designation is, is what it shows on there, which is majority quasi-public, and then medium density residential. We're proposing to change the whole thing to quasi-public, so a little bit of a comp plan amendment, and then the whole thing, we're proposing to get a zone
Okay,
change.
so the comp plan amendment is to turn the MR into QP.
Yes, yes.
And then the zoning will become I.
Yes.
Okay.
The whole thing to institutional. Institutional is the zoning designation associated with quasi-public, so
that-
it's a
that's
little
fine. I
bit
just
odd that
wanted-
it's R10 anyway.
Because scrolling through your stuff and everything, I just see that, and it's like, why are you leaving this little tiny unbuildable piece that, you know, so, okay.
Yes.
So it's gonna go away, it's all gonna become blue, and then it's gonna get a great big eye plastered over the top of it.
That's what we're hoping for. So all of this application is to do, the purpose of this application is to relocate the Community Development Department to the annex. In order to do that, that's where the zoning designation, the comp plan designation come in for the whole site. And then we also have some minor exterior alterations for just the annex building. Those we could have done outside of this hearing process, but we decided to group them together so we have full transparency for the public, and we're kind of packaging everything all together for the commission. So it is unusual for you to see this minor site plan design review too. Typically, it's something that we would do over the counter for the most part, unless it hits more than 75,000 exterior building improvements. So that is the purpose of this application. I know there were questions about the police facility. And so recently there was an approval on the ballot to have a public safety building in this location. And so I know that they'll be going through a long public process to work through what the details of that would be. We don't know what they are right now. This zoning designation would allow that public safety facility to occur through a conditional use. And so you'd want to know what those details are to really figure out what the impact of that is. That's why we're not doing anything with that at all, because we don't know what the community impact is, because we don't know what it looks like or where things are going. So that's why we're a little bit separate, and our timing is a little bit different. We're currently in a lease, and our lease is up at the end of April.
Yeah.
I wish it was
So-
August.
Got all that, no problem. I guess, here's the part where I'm gonna just pick on you as the head of community development. This is a comp plan amendment.
Mm-hmm.
It's going through fairly quickly and fairly simply. Why isn't the wetlands in Kenema, which is a comp plan amendment, going through very quickly and very simply?
Yeah, there are different processes. Thank you. I approve that. I am appreciative of that question. So there's a different, just for context for the viewing public, the question is about a wetlands in Kenema, which is a separate site. We found a wetlands on a property that's not within our natural resource overlay district. And so staff had identified that we would go and amend that. And we did a little bit of research and found out that it's complicated. Usually things with natural resources are always very complicated as far as how many maps you amend and how that works with Metro and things like that. So that is on our work plan. We found that, 4 months ago, 5 months, it wasn't.
Yeah, it's not
It
like
wasn't
it's been
extreme
around
long
for
time, yeah.
years.
Yeah, we have, so from the staffing perspective, we have had an employee move out of state, and so we were down staff and we had to advertise, and so we recently advertised and filled 3 positions. So we've been really busy. As you can see with the number of applications that have come before you, the number that haven't come before you is incredible. So yes, we haven't done that yet. It is on our list. I understand it is a priority of the Planning Commission, but we have also identified to the City Commission that we would do that. So we've done this first because we need to move. And so in order to move, we need to have the zoning correct, and we want to go through a really good, open, public, transparent process to do that. And we could have done the exterior alterations beforehand, before all this, but we wanted to be as clear and transparent as possible. We don't want to see anyone getting a new roof without this zoning thing, thinking, oh, they've already made their decision. So we really want to be open, and that's why we're here today.
Well, let's just put a condition on it that says that we will approve this subject to getting the wetlands thing in Kenema complete.
There we go. Yeah.
I would encourage you as an applicant to stay clear to the actual approval criteria and have that little nexus there.
So let me ask you this question. So I understand that in the R10 zone that you can have a police facility, but I don't see anything in the R10 zone to allow for offices.
Exactly.
It's interesting to me that in the I zone, that you have to get a conditional use permit to put in a fire station, but you don't have to get a conditional use permit to put in a police station or an office. So I submit to you, why are you requesting this comp plan amendment, since it's the most extreme application that we have, and the bar is very, very, very high?
So that's a great question. So are you specifically talking about the comp plan designation or the zoning as well?
Both, because the institutional zone is, I'm going to make an opinion, so you don't have to listen. She does, but you don't. It's far more liberal. Most of these facilities are adjacent to residential areas, and I don't see anything that's being done within the zoning code for this zone to allow for community livability, making them, fit into a setting that they're surrounded by residential, that they don't look institutional, those sort of things.
Yeah, so the reason why we're doing this proposal is because we want to move government offices there for community development into the annex, and it doesn't fit in the R10 zoning designation. The majority of the site is already quasi-public. It's a site that's owned by the city. Personally, I love the location for community development because a lot of our customers are served in this area, so this is a central location as it relates to community development. You saw earlier tonight some applications in the South End area and up on the hilltop. We do have a lot of customers from there. This site is good from our perspective because it's on the transit line. It is near other, you can see mixed use to the south and multifamily. There are a lot of uses there right now. A lot of actually institutional uses, right? There's churches and schools and things like that.
But they require an additional level of review, so you could have applied for a similar use, since there already was an office there with the Educational Service District, and you're having an office there.
I want to be as open and transparent as possible. I want to do the right thing, right? An institutional use of government, a government office makes sense in an institutional use. I don't want to do any tricky.
There wasn't.
But no, I really appreciate that. We want to take the hard road because we want to do what's right for the city, and we want to do it in a very open and transparent way.
Gentlemen?
Also, I think the color turns a little darker on this. We haven't picked an actual color yet, but it was going to be dark gray.
Just don't pick dark gray.
This makes it look really dark because of the background.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, the other person sitting there, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Commission. My name is Matthew Crawford. I'm an architectural and engineer technician at ZCS. I work for the client, and I was a designer on this project. With regards to the project, we did look at the building for its structural integrity. We analyzed the seismic lateral system, reinforced the building in those regards. That's about all I have.
ZCS helped us a bunch at the very beginning when we were trying to decide if it was a good idea to continue to pursue this. They did a structural analysis that let us know that the bones here are strong. There's just subject to deferred maintenance, which a lot of institutional buildings are, yeah. And so that's where the new roof, the new siding and things like that come in. But it was good for us to know that this structure is worthy of investment, and it's cheaper for the city in the long run to maintain our existing resources and put money into what we have rather than go build new buildings and things like that as far as our needs for community development.
Real quick, before I make a motion, what's your current square footage? What's it going to be?
It's about the same, minus the gym. Okay. So the gym area is a little bit of a room to grow. So the total square footage of the annex is 6,850. Our square footage is almost exactly the same, where it's a little more than 5,000. And so actually the configuration is kind of similar to ours now, where we have offices on one side and the conference room and the lunchroom on the other. So we're taking all our existing furniture. We're going to use what we can. The budget seems high, but when it comes to construction, it's not very high, and we want to use our resources.
It means it doesn't fall over in an earthquake. It's a good money.
So it's not gold. We're just taking we're capitalizing our existing resources.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion.
Excuse me?
As soon as she's done.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, because I don't have your slip. So what is your first name again?
Matthew.
Matthew. So humor me, Matthew. Could you make it less gray? Would there be an opportunity to pick a color palette that's less gray?
I kind of like it, actually.
Sure.
I'm just asking. I just said humor me. I said humor me.
I don't think you got a good representation of it from this screen. We have a color palette selected.
Did you bring it with you?
I did not bring it with me, no, but
I'm meeting.
it's something we're going to be discussing this week.
Well, I would love to see it.
And just to add to that, I'm a kind of a professional photographer. I mount pictures all the time for display out at Gresham City Hall. And we're encouraged with color photographs to use dark grays and blacks because it makes all the colors of the things pop, like the flowers they showed. So I kind of like the dark gray.
Whatever, okay.
Just want to remind everybody, it's not a criteria for approval.
I already told you that I don't care. That's why I said humor me.
So
We just
I'd
have our
like
rules.
to, I'd like to move that we approve PZ 1701, ZZ 1704, and SP 17114.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there anything else before we call for the roll? So call for the roll, please.
Okay. Commissioner Guile?
Aye.
Commissioner Baby?
Aye.
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Chair McGriff?
Abstain.
Okay, motion passes.
You and your color palette.
Okay, so there's no further business before us, and I would like to respectfully skip communications again because the hour is late. Can I have a motion for adjournment, please?
I motion to adjourn.
I move, we adjourn.
I move to adjourn. I motion to.
Is there a second?
I motion.
Second.
Okay. Is there any abstentions? Okay, we are adjourned.